music.
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
We won't be out long.
Take your time. Track's all yours.
You ready? The name on the middle of that steering wheel should tell you that I was born ready. Hit it. Attaboy.
Let me drive. I won't make a fool out of you.
I got a message for all of them. Shake and bake.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind?
That just happened.
These cars, you sit in a box, a coffin, gasoline all around you. It is like being inside a bomb.
It's tough enough being a girl on the track. Living in my dad's shadow doesn't help much.
You have to be kind to the car. You feel the poor thing groaning underneath you.
No race was ever won in the first corner.
I'm gonna give you an engine, low to the ground, extra big oil pans will cut the wind from underneath you. That'll give you 30 to 40 more horsepower.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
Brakes are warm. Tires are warm.
I'll work in the cars and I'll drive and I'll eat and sleep and I'll work in the cars and I'll drive.
Damn fast, and when he runs it close together, it requires fantastic concentration and rather special skills.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
If you're going to push a piece of machinery to the limit and expect it to hold together, you have to have some sense of where that limit is.
Besides, the best drivers don't dwell on the future or the past. The best drivers focus only on the present.
They could never have imagined it, those pioneers who invented the automobile, that it would possess us like this in our imaginations, our dreams.
I'm gonna give you a fuel line that will hold an extra gallon of gas. I'm gonna shave half an inch off you and shape you like a bullet.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
Racing is in my blood.
I was put on this earth to race cars.
I accept every time I get in my car. There's 20% chance I could die, and I can live with it, but not 1% more.
No, Nicky, don't bring the percentages into this. Don't be a pro. The minute you do that, you kill what's good about this. You kill the sport.
And at that speed, your reactions can barely keep up with these sudden changes in direction.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up?
You want me to work the pit and you drive? Fine, we'll try that.
The car's a living, breathing thing, and she's alive.
If any of us imagined, really imagined, what it would be like to go into a tree at 150 miles an hour, we would probably never get into the cars at all. None of us.
Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
I am just as good as anybody out there on that track, and I don't need anybody to win my races for me.
I wish my daddy were alive to see this, to feel this.
And when we get you prime painted and weighed, you'll be ready to go out on that racetrack. You hear me? You're gonna be perfect.
You don't understand what happens, do you? They make 10,000 cars, they make them exactly the same way, and one or two of them turn out to be something special. Nobody knows why.
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
So it has always seemed to me that to do something very dangerous requires a certain absence of imagination.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
Soon you will know what it is like to be defeated by the hands of somebody who is truly better than you.
The only thing to do here is to drive just as fast as you know how and hope your car doesn't break.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
If you ain't first, you're last. There's 40 other vultures out there who managed to finish the race on their tires. You see Darrell Waltrip using up his tires?
There's nothing I can't do with a race car.
I mean, hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? I mean, come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
Sometimes you could swear the whole thing's falling to bits.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
On the other hand, I suppose potential problems are in the back of your mind all the time.
So in many ways, I feel responsible for what happened. And
You were, but trust me, watching you win those races while I was fighting for my life, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
You're so lucky. You sit there all closed in by machinery and bolts, precise things. There's hardly any room for you. It must be a nice, safe feeling.
You gotta learn to trust something. Just as well be the seat of your pants.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Well, we can drive. We can drive beyond the limits of the tires, the engine, the car, anything else.
Look out there. Out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes. Every gear change, every corner. Perfect. You see it.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
But it isn't just business, is it? What we do, it's passion, love, which is why we're prepared to risk our lives for it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Why does everybody keep telling me what my problem is?
That you get so emotional.
You would never, ever say that to a guy.
If you don't leave your feelings off the track, you're never going to get what you want.
I'm a race driver, and I can win it on my
we race?
Fine. Then let's race.
Welcome to round one of the Grand Prix World Series Season 2. Today we will be going at the New Zealand track of Taupo. We have some fantastic racing in for you today. 2 leagues of racing for you coming up today. Both a 75% race distance. We have League 1 and League 2. Renamed from the first race after some people complained about the nature of them being called tiers, which I think, given the current pandemic, completely understandable. So we will now be running Tier 1 and Tier 2. First of all, beginning with Tier 2, before moving on to the League 1 race. My name is Topher Smith in the commentary box. Alongside me is Tom Kent. Tom, welcome back to the commentary box.
Hello, Topher. Hello, everybody. How are we all? And yes, we are most definitely ready for the start of the season here in Taupo. And given the non-championship race in Vancouver, you know, given the maladies we had with it, we could be in for a brilliant showing here in Taupo as we did last year, and most definitely last year's race, where the top 6 drivers were separated by just under 5 seconds, Topher. So if that's anything to go by, we could be in for a brilliant showing here in both League 1 and League 2 races.
Yes, an absolutely fantastic race last time out at Taupo. As you say, the top 6 so close by the end of it. That race ultimately won by the Minardi of Marc Genet, that transpiring to be Minardi's only win of the season. And in case you didn't see what happened on the streets of Vancouver, that was supposed to be round 1 of the Grand Prix World Series Season 2, but an unfortunate pit lane glitch meant that there were multiple cars who were taken out of the race, not of their own accord. So after discussing with the team managers following the conclusion of the race, we decided that that race would be null and void, and it would be used basically as an experiment for the teams to see how their teams go and how they can upgrade their cars more towards power or more towards reliability. So some teams have been given upgrades, some have put some on power, some have spent other money on reliability, and we're now ready for round 1 at Taupo. A couple of driver changes to make you aware of. The first of those coming at Manor. American Hollywood legend Tom Cruise was in the Manor car, he was collecting footage for an upcoming movie that he is making. And Tom, I think it was a good thing that he got to the end of that race, because imagine if he'd been one of the people who had retired early on, he wouldn't have really got any footage, would he?
No, he wouldn't. And the fact he got all the way to the end of the race for the Manor team, he did a splendid job getting all the footage he needed for his upcoming movie, which I'm most definitely looking forward to seeing. But now that his time has come to an end, it's given an opportunity to Marco Andretti, who I feel will be a huge, huge replacement for the Manor team to help kickstart their campaign and see the championship with both him and Brendan Hartley within the Manor squad.
And that is a driver change that will be happening in League 1. Manor are the vice champions of the Grand Prix World Series. Marco Andretti stepping into Tom Cruise's seat there, keeping it all American in the number 4 car alongside Brendan Hartley. And one driver change to make you aware of in League 2 is that the Modena team the team has dropped the 86-year-old AJ Foyt. They gave him a one-race outing in Vancouver to see how he would get on. And to be fair, Tom, he didn't do that bad a job.
Yeah, well, we saw it in both the pre-season festival and at the non-championship round in Vancouver that AJ Foyt, his pace was not too bad either, but I felt, the change between him and Will Stevens will be the way to go. Will Stevens, obviously a former Formula One driver with the Man of Mauritius squad in 2015. Can he bring his experience onto the Grand Prix World Series grid with the Modena team? And I am confident that he can do a really, really good job with them.
I think he'll do a very good job as well. He's got youth on his side and experience on his side as well. Will that be a good change for Paul Twemlow? We'll have to wait to find out whether that was an inspired choice. But now we're about to head down to the grid, the opening round at the Taupo circuit in New Zealand. And Tom, how do you see this one going?
Well, I can see it going very, very well, actually. And Jose Maria Lopez and Danny Kvyat look as though they could be two of the favourites going for the victory, as well as Adrian Sutil showing some genuine pace in the Hispania. He could be in the frame as well, as he was the only other driver to be less than a 10th off pole position to Jose Maria Lopez. Scott Speed is right up there as well. Cal Milot and Alex Wurz showed some great pace in the non-championship races. And Will Stevens, on his first outing for the squad, can he spring a surprise to the grid in the Modena on his maiden outing in the Grand Prix World Series?
And speaking of the grid, let's take you through that to get this started. Jose Maria Lopez, as you say, Tom, is on pole position ahead of Daniel Kvyat in the Pacific. Adrian Sutil lining up third on row 2 ahead of Scott Speed. What can they do from row 2? Row 3 is made up of Callum Eilert and Alexander Wurz ahead of debutant Will Stevens and Perry McCarthy and Coloni finishing up row 4 there. Mark Blundell and Nick Heidfeld make up row 5 ahead of the second Coloni of McNish and the LaRousse of Alexander Rossi. He's looking for a good start to his season there from row 6. Row 7 is the Pacific of Timo Glock alongside the Zach Speed of Sam Bird. Robert Wickens and Leighton House ahead of the HRT of Dario Franchitti. Then we have Neil Jarney and Mike Conway, the teammates from Real, sharing row 9 there. Zanardi and Brundle make up row 10 ahead of Marcus Winkelhock, starting up row 11 ahead of Cristiano D'Amata in the Fondmetal. Vincenzo Sospiri alongside Al Unser Jr., now the elder statesman of the grid, now that AJ Foyt has departed. And then Enrique Benoldi there heading up row 13. And we now go live to the grid. Jose Maria Lopez on pole position ahead of Daniel Kvyat. This is going to be an epic run down to the first corner. Many teams here, many drivers all want to taste success in this opening round. And we are seconds away from finding out how the opening few laps of this race will go. The lights are coming on now on board with Lopez. And we are away at Taupo. And it's a great start from Jose Maria Lopez in Europe run. He is shot away from Daniel Kvyat, who looks like he's already losing out to Adrian Sutil and HRT. But Kvyat gets back down the inside of the German. Sutil hanging on around the outside. Those two are going neck and neck around turn 1. It looks like Sutil's now going to have the inside into turn 2, but Kvyat holding on around the outside. Wurz is into 4th place ahead of Will Stevens in 5th on his debut. And you can look back there and see that Daniel Kvyat is now properly ahead of Adrian Sutil. Wurz now trying to make a move on Sutil as well for 3rd place. And a little bit of argy-bargy there from Mark Blundell as he was being overtaken by Alan McNish and the Coloni. Dario Franchitti and the HRT also making a way through on the life of Blundell as he got offline. Tom, it looks like there's no major incidents on the opening lap of this race.
No, pretty much clean all the way through. The top 3 remaining the same at the start. Alex Wurz and Will Stevens making up 2 positions each. Scott Speed, in contrast, has dropped down 2 from his grid position. And Perry McCarthy has done well in the Coloni in 7th place. So it's all around a good, clean start for the drivers as Lopez pulls away.
Yes, a fantastic start there for the Argentinian ahead of Daniel Kvyat. Those two not really fighting each other. Kvyat wanted to get the jump on Jose Maria Lopez off the line, but Lopez just got a perfect start. He nailed the runoff from lights out. And now Kvyat under attack from Adrian Sutil there in the HRT. And actually Kvyat now looks like he's closing in on Lopez now that he's found the way past Sutil. So maybe, Tom, Daniel Kvyat will make a move on Lopez soon.
I'd like to think so, and it's a 60-lap race. I'm not quite sure how its strategy is going to play out. I would imagine some of these will try and do a 2-stop and some will do the 1, but we'll have to wait and see at the moment, as Lopez isn't exactly played out a huge margin over Kvyat, but from what we've seen last year, overtaking is, you know, it's not that easy to make, really. So I think pit strategy is going to play a huge role in this one, as Lopez, Kvyat and Suttil looking as though they're sticking to each other like glue at the moment. But we are only on the second lap of this League 2 race here in Taupo. Alex Wirtz doing as good of a job he can to stay in touch with the top 3 in the Leighton House, as Will Stevens stays with him as well.
I think a surprisingly clean start here for the Grand Prix World Series. We've seen in a lot of Retro Racing Managers League races that the starts can be a bit chaotic at times. We've seen multiple cars being fired off at turn 1. But yeah, I'm actually quite surprised as to how clean this one is, as Adrian Suttil puts in the fastest lap on lap 2. He's closing down this leading duo. But as it stands, all 26 drivers are still running, and from what I've seen, Tom, none of them have gone into the pits yet.
No, it's surprising. I mean, normally we'd see a driver or two head into the pits for a change of front wing or rear wing at the end of lap 1 or 2, but thankfully all the drivers are still in there and still in sync. And you can see Marcus Fingerhock in the, what I believe is the Eurobrun, in 20th position. And yeah, it's been it's been a very clean start from all the drivers, and no major incidents as of yet, but there's still a long way to go. And given what we saw last year when with so many different leaders, you know, if we get a repeat of that, then we could be through an interesting race here in New Zealand.
One thing I am quite surprised about at the moment, Tom, is the difference in speed between Jose Maria Lopez, the current lead car, and his teammate Marcus Winkelhock. Eurobrun clearly has a good car that David Juntas put together from his power and reliability upgrades. He's put in a good balance there and he's got his drawing foot up into the lead. But then you have Winkelhock down there in 20th position, and that's quite a big gulf between the drivers. Do you think that's merely the fact that Jose Maria Lopez is just that much better, or do you think that just showcases how close this field is in terms of the field spread?
Well, clearly Jose Maria Lopez is the younger driver to Winkelhock, and although Winkelhock is experienced from his days in sports cars, Jose Maria Lopez has had more of the single-seater experience, so that could play a role in this one actually, as to why Lopez is so much quicker than his German teammate. And as you can see there, that's the Leighton House of what looks like Robert Wickens, who's currently outside the top 15 at the moment. He's behind what looks like the Zap speed of Sam Bird.
And there's another driver difference that I thought might be a bit closer. Wirtz is up there in 4th place in the lead Leighton House, and we've got Robert Wickens down there fighting amongst the midfield. I was expecting Wickens to be a bit further up in this field as well. He's a proven race winner and front runner in multiple series. He's won races in DTM. He was a pole position sitter and front runner in IndyCar. Arguably should have won races over there. But so far, his start to his Grand Prix World Series campaign not really going according to plan. He's there outside of the top 15. And it looks like Sam Bird there was trying to get past, I think that was a Modena ahead of him. He's trying to make his way up into the higher reaches and get himself some points. And looking back towards the front, it's still as you were between the top 5. Lopez leading ahead of Daniel Kvyat, Adrian Suttil, Alexander Wirtz and Will Stevens. And looking back there, the back of the shot, it looks like Will Stevens is coming under attack from his teammate Scott Speed. Speed already integrated into the Modena team and showing just how fast he is back in the Formula 1 car. Will Stevens has come into the team and almost upstaged the American by out-qualifying him. Speed clearly not having any of that, and he wants to get back through ahead of his younger teammate.
So Lopez continuing to pull away from Danny Kvyat in second. Is Adrian Suttil, Alex Wirtz, Will Stevens in third, fourth and fifth, followed by Scott Speed, Perry McCarthy, Callum Milot, Nick Eifel and Alex Rossi rounding out the top 10 point scorers.
And we have Alan McNish and Scuderia Coloni in 11th place. As we look at Adrian Suttil trying to make a move on Danny Kvyat, we've cut away from that at the wrong time. We're looking at Cristiano D'Amata down in 23rd position. But looking at the graphics, Suttil still behind Kvyat, but trying to find a way through on the Pacific. And we've got Sam Bird having another look there at the Real, I think that was actually. I identified as a Modena earlier. I think it's actually a Real getting a second look at that. But cutting away from that lead battle at just the wrong moment, Suttil still behind Danny Kvyat and looking for a way through. And this is allowing Jose Maria Lopez a bit of breathing room, as he now has a gap of over a second to Kvyat behind him. And behind that lot, Scott Speed is still trying to find a way past Will Stevens. He's right there behind his teammate. And Alan McNish, less than half a second away from a top 10 here, trying to get past Alexander Rossi for a championship point. And Lopez, looking in his mirrors at what's going on behind him, he's just going to want those two to keep fighting each other the whole race long and just allow him to get away.
So we're right on board here with Adrian Sittle. This is a cracking view, isn't it, from the HRT? And here's Vincenzo Sospiri. What looks like he's racing in one of the, well, looks like one of the backmarker teams, Andrea Moda it is. He's just ahead of what looks like the Force India of Alex Sinardi.
And Tom, we've got an engine problem up ahead. I can't quite tell who that is yet. It's a HRT. It is Dario Franchitti, who is retiring from this race. That does not bode well for John Monroe's team. One car already dropping out of this race. Here is a shot of Dario Franchitti with a mechanical problem. And if that's going to happen to Dario early on in this race, how's that going to fare for Adrian Suttle up there in third?
Well, it's not good news, really. I mean, I don't think Dario Franchitti had any problems in the pre-season festival. Oh yeah, he did, didn't he, in the pre-season festival at Watkins Glen? And he's not having a fair share of good luck, is he, at the moment, in that HRT? We're only in the first race of the season. Oh, there we go. There's a blaze now, isn't it, from the HRT? It does need to pull over very, very soon.
Oh, and we've got another one, Tom. We've got another one. And, oh, there's a bit of argy-bargy. I think that might have been Sam Bird trying to get past Franchitti. And we've got another blow-up. That is Sospiri in the Andrea Moda. We have two engine blow-ups within the space of a lap. Here's Franchitti being craned off the circuit. That is an end to the Scotsman's race. But getting hit from behind, I think that was Sam Bird and Zach Speed who hit the A-Link Scott there. Not really sure what was going on there. It might have just been some confusion between the drivers. And we have Sospiri, who's now on fire as well. He should pull off to the side of the circuit. Luckily, he's got no cars behind him. But yeah, Tom, Sam Bird tripping up over Dario Franchitti's HRT there. Do you think Franchitti maybe should have got off the circuit earlier?
Yeah, I think so, because he travelled around for half a lap, didn't he, with an A-Link car. And as you can see there, Vincenzo Sospiri pulling to the side. That's his opening round of the championship over for him after only 6 laps of racing for him. And that's one of the Andrea Modas out of the race along with one of the HRTs. So Jose Manuel Lopez, only a second still ahead of Danica Fiat. I'd love to know what pit strategy each of the top 3 are going to be on Topher, because if you look at Will Stevens, or Alex Wirtz even, he's losing a bit of ground to them.
Well, that is a very interesting question, Tom. We haven't seen the fuel loads yet, and it looks like Kvyat has closed in on Jose Maria Lopez a bit, but I get the impression at this moment in time that they're all running quite similar fuel loads, and we'll wait to have to see the digital readouts in the car to see what fuel levels they are on. We're looking back at that Adrian Sittle there, and here is Alan Knish trying to make a move into the top 10 on Alexander Rossi. Rossi cuts off the Scotsman, and McNish has to wait until another corner to find a way through past the LaRousse. And we're riding on board now with Sam Bird. Has he got a problem? He's just had a couple of cars go past him. And yes, Tom, he's got an oil leak. Sam Bird getting caught up in Dario Franchitti's retirement earlier, and he's now having one of his own.
Yep, and there's no smoke coming out of that Zach Speed yet, but there will be very shortly, as it's shown on the dashboard. He's got an oil leak there as Sam Bird, and that's about to go ablaze in any moment. So I think if Sam Bird knows that the game's up, I think he should probably pull over or come into the pits to retire the car.
I think he should be pulling over to the side of the road as soon as he can. Who knows what sort of oil he could be laying down onto the road, and maybe that could cause problems for other people later on in this race. Meanwhile, we look at Nick Heidfeld, Sam Bird's teammate at Zach Speed, run by Mike Smith this season. Heidfeld up there in 9th place, and Wirtz has been dropping down the order, and there he is, Alexander Wirtz dropping down the order. This is a problem for the Leighton House. It is, he has a throttle problem. That is a real shame for the Austrian. He was running very well up in 4th place, possibly on for a podium. There's a bit more of contact behind him, and we're going to have to look at the replay of that to find out who there was, but Alexander Wirtz having a throttle problem. There's Alexander Rossi, who was hit up the back by Mark Blundell, and Wirtz, it looks like, has made his way back into the pit, so hopefully the Leighton House mechanics will be able to sort that out. Sam Bird is now officially out of the race. He has pulled the Zach Speed over to the side of the circuit. Wirtz into pit, and Tom, he was running so well up there in 4th, just trailing onto the back of this top 3, and that's not going to do any good for Leighton House and Chris Caveney.
No, not very good, and now it's going to be pretty much all down to Robert Wickens in terms of what he can salvage from this race. But at least Wirtz is going to be at the back of the field, you know, with some clear track ahead of him, so he could put in some fast laps before he comes back into the pits for his first scheduled stop of the race. I don't know if they refueled the Leighton House. It'd be ideal if they have done, but if he has, then he's going to be on a very, very heavy fuel load. But yeah, he's going to have to put in some really blistering times and completely undercut on a few drivers.
We'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. The fresher tyres could help him in some clear air. And at the front, it looks like Jose Maria Lopez has put more of a gap onto Kvyat and Sutil behind him. He's pulling away from the fighting duo. Sutil getting right up the back of Kvyat. And there's Mark Blundell having a look at Alexander Rossi for 10th place. McNish, not seen on the camera, has got past Rossi for what is now 9th place. And he's pulled away from the American in the LaRousse. And now Blundell wants to get past Rossi as well into the top 10. Rossi wanted to go forward, but at the moment making his way backwards.
Yeah, he's not had a good few laps as Rossi, as McNish has got by him. And, you know, he's... You know, given the race has panned out so far, it looks like it's plain sailing there for the likes of Lopez, Kvyat and Sutil, as Enrique Bernaldi in what looks like, we just have a look, he's in the Fond Metal, Ewan Gale's team, locking up into turn 1. But,
that's not what Enrique Bernaldi will want to do this race. He wants to move further forward and get up into points, but the Fond Metal, not really the fastest car at the moment. They put a bit more into the reliability of the car for this season. But was that a car on the side of the circuit there, or was that a car that's already retired? I think that might have been a previously stricken car there. I just caught a glimpse of someone at the side of the road and was hoping we hadn't had another retirement. We still have 50 laps to go in this race here at Taupo. We're past the 1/6 race distance and we start lap 12. Lopez 1.1 ahead of Danny Kvyat, who is 0.2 ahead of Sutil. Stevens in the Modern are still ahead of his teammate Scott Speed. They're having their own little battle for 4th and 5th. Perry McCarthy and Klein in. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, we've got a car going airborne now. It's Alex Nardi with a loose wheel trying to get his Force India into pit. And I think that was a Fond Metal behind him who tripped up over his rear tyre. I'm not sure whether that was Bernaldi or Cristiano D'Amata. But to me, it was D'Amata. He's coming into the pit as well. But Tom, that looked to me as if Zanardi was trying to come into the pit, while D'Amata was trying to go around him.
Yeah, it looked a bit strange really, because that's one of the problems with the pit entries. On the right hand side, if you've got a car alongside you, then that could cause all sorts of problems. So once again, we've got another pit, not a pit exit issue, but a pit entry issue, where drivers are sort of peeling in almost into the path of another driver. And yeah, I just hope that's not a sign of things to come with Zanardi and D'Amata colliding with each other there.
I get the impression as Heidfeld has a look there at Callum Eilert for 7th place. I very much get the impression that we won't be seeing a similar sort of pit lane glitch to what we saw in Vancouver. I think that's just simply a case of wrong place, wrong time for Cristiano D'Amata.
So Will Stevens is up into 4th place at the moment, Scott Speed right behind him as well. And as you can see, Mark Blundell, well, that's not Mark Blundell, Danny Kvyat, I should say, in 2nd position. He's doing a fair job, isn't he, Kvyat? I mean, he binned it in the non-championship race in Vancouver whilst he was in the lead. He's still showing his racecraft.
And Danny Kvyat was absolutely dominating at Vancouver and looks set to take what would have been a comprehensive victory in Canada. But yeah, he dropped it through the final sector all of his own accord. He was under no pressure whatsoever, had a lead of about 20 seconds at the time. And yeah, just lost the back end and backed into the wall, and the loss of his rear wing forced the Russian to retire. And Kvyat coming back for 2nd on the grid in this race, he would have been fired up and wanting to claim redemption for the loss of that win in Vancouver. I mean, at the end of the day, Tom, it didn't really count anyway because points weren't awarded for that race due to the extenuating circumstances. But Kvyat, he's a racer, he wants to win.
Of course, and as you can see, his teammate at the Pacific team, Timo Glock, in 12th place. And I don't think he finished last year's race, did he? But he looks as though he was in the frame for a victory. I think he led for a bit, didn't he, Glock, before retiring?
Are you going to bring up that fateful Super Guri season again, Tom? Just like you did multiple times last race?
Well, to be honest, why wouldn't I? It is within the interests of those who are watching Topher. So. But yeah.
I'm the super guru boss, I know, but I'm not at all bitter. No, I mean, Glock should have won more races last season, but hey, that's the way it goes. I didn't put enough money into the reliability of the car and ultimately paid the penalty. That is one of the good things about the Grand Prix World Series, the team budget that each team manager gets from each race. They choose to put it into either upgrading the power of their car or upgrading the reliability of their car. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. Last season I decided to go a bit more down the power route, and I had a fast car, but ultimately not a reliable car. And with Timo Glock, for example, he finished 5 races, I believe it was, last season, and he won 2 of them. So the speed was there, but ultimately he didn't finish enough races, and that's what cost him a championship fight.
Yeah, and you can see there the LaRue of what looks like Alex Rossi in 10th place, and you can see Robert Wickens in the Leighton House tried to complete a move on what looks like Mike Conway.
Robert Wickens in the Leighton House trying to get past Mike Conway for 14th place. But Leighton House teammate Robert Wickens was running up in 4th earlier, but now he's dropped down to the back of the field with his earlier issue. Wickens now running highest for Leighton House in 15th, and he will want to get up into points paying positions if he can. He's currently about 11 seconds away from Alexander Rossi, as we now look at Adrian Sittel right up the back of Danny Kvyat, and he wants to find a way through as soon as he can so he can get up after Lopez. And here is Scott Speed having a look at his teammates. Golden rule of racing, boys, do not take out your teammates, and they were very close to doing so there. Will Stevens still holding off Scott Speed for 4th place. And Tom, this has been a remarkable debut for Will Stevens so far, up there in 4th place.
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job on his debut for the team, and Scott Speed right behind him. So I think they could be in for a good points haul should they both get to the end of this Taupo race in this League 2 category. And Ryder on board again with the American. So they could be on for a good points haul. And, if anything happens to the top 3, they could be even, getting a better result for the team.
Well, as I alluded to earlier, reliability is quite a major factor in the Grand Prix World Series. You can have a fast car, but if you have a faster car, the chances are you have a more unreliable car. It completely depends on what the team managers choose to go with their budgets. Some electing to put all of their money into power, which is what John Munro at HRT did in the first part of the season. He put all of his available budget onto power, not upgrading the reliability at all. And as shown so far, they have a fast car at the hands of Adrian Sutil and Dario Franchitti before his retirement earlier. But whether they reach the end of the race or not, that is another matter. And here is Sutil having a look at Kvyat, and Kvyat blocks him off. He cuts off the German in the HRT. Kvyat trying to get after Jose Maria Lopez for the lead, but he's now having to focus more on his mirrors, and Sutil behind him. And Lopez is just saying thank you very much, driving his own race and keeping hold of the lead.
Yeah, Sutil needed to be alongside Kvyat a little bit sooner, actually, and to complete the move. And here's Robert Wickens trying to complete that same maneuver, but he just can't quite do it. It's a tricky circuit to overtake here in Taupo, isn't it? And there's not too many overtaking places around. And as I've already mentioned earlier in the stream, it's just he's going to come.
We've got a problem here for Timo Glock. Sorry to cut across you there, Tom. Timo Glock in the second Pacific having a reliability issue there. And this is exactly what we're talking about, Tom. You can have a fast car, but if you don't have a reliable car, you might not get to the end of the race. And that's Timo Glock out with what looks like it could have been either an engine problem or a water leak. We'll have to get confirmation of that later on. But yet another retirement in this race. We still have quite a few runners in this field at this point of the race. And it's good to see we have a race on our hands at the front of the field, Tom.
Yep, and the top 10 is still relatively close, as there is beginning to be a gap bridging between Mark Blundell in 11th and Martin Brundle in 12th. It looks like there's about 12 seconds between those two, so you can definitely see a distinctive difference in the battles up and down the field. You can see Jose Maria Lopez continuing to lead ahead of the sole surviving Pacific of Danny Kvyat. Adrian Sutil is third. Here is Alex Wirtz alongside the Force India of Al Unser Jr. and he's done it there. Brilliant move there from the Austrian.
Bert's making to look the newer tyres work on his Leighton House. He came into pits earlier on with a mechanical issue, and he managed to get that car reset, get some fresh tyres on it, and he's now looking to make it count. And where is he going to filter through to when everyone else makes their first pit stops, and how will that have affected the strategy of Bert's as well? Will they have elected to go on a different strategy? Will they still be sticking to plan? We'll have to wait to see how that one pans out. And we're looking at the two Moderners, they're still stuck to each other. Will Stevens heading Scott Speed, and I'm surprised that Speed hasn't made a proper attack yet here. As Speed, as you know, Tom, is one of the most aggressive drivers we have in this field. I would have thought he'd be doing everything to get past Will Stevens, but ultimately, he's still there in 5th place.
Yeah, and I don't know if team orders need to come into play here for the Andrea Moda team. Lewis Bassendale, the team boss of that squad, will be most definitely considering getting Will Stevens out of the way and letting Scott Speed go and chase after the leaders, as it's now 8 seconds between Stevens and Suthill. So it's a big gap that's bridging out now, and here's Alex Nardi backing once again with the Von Metal of Cristiano Di Matta.
I mean, Team Orders is an interesting one in this series, because yes, Will Stevens is the new boy of the Modena team and Scott Speed already the established driver there, but at this point in the season we're only on round 1, we don't have any championship points yet. Does the team really have any incentive to give out Team Orders just yet? Both drivers at this moment in time still equally have a chance of taking the championship, and it really depends on what Lewis Bassendale sees in his two drivers. Does he want to swap them around? Does he want Scott Speed to be the lead driver, or is he going to give them an equal footing? That's for him to decide. And meanwhile, at the front, Jose Maria Lopez still continues to lead as Adrian Suthill becomes the first of the front runners to pit.
Yeah, and where is he going to come back out in regards to traffic? He'll want to get out in front of Martin Blundell. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, if that Blundell's come into the pit, so at least that's one less car for Suthill to be passing on track. Now, if I was Lopez or Kafia, I'd highly consider coming into the pits at the end of the lap to cover off the Hispania.
Suthill looking to get an undercut here on the leading two drivers. Suthill has rejoined in 13th place behind the Leighton House of Robert Wicken, so he's in amongst that gaggle of cars. And with the two leading drivers, it depends on what fuel loads they have, because if they've only got a couple of laps left, they will have to come in and pit. But if they've got a bit more fuel in the tank, they can see where Suthill has come out, not want to be in that gaggle of cars, and they might stay out a bit longer to try and get themselves some clear air. Now, it looks like Lopez made a little bit of a mistake through that previous corner, just locking up the wheels a bit. He lost a little bit of time to Kvyat, and both of them are continuing on for at least another lap. We haven't seen the fuel loads just yet. Adrian Suthill, just a second off of Robert Wiggins down in 13th place. He's going to want to dispatch those drivers as soon as possible. And looking at the graphic in the midfield, Rossi has just overtaken McNish for 9th place, and that is why Alan McNish is now into the pits as well. So we're now starting to see the first round of pit stops. Suthill has already come in and done his pit stop. McNish now into pits, and we can't be that far away from more pit stops later on as well.
You can see a very easy overtake manoeuvres. The Force India got a problem there. Is that there?
No, I think he might do. Oh, he's got it all wrong through the chicane there. He might well have a problem. He was very slow down the straight. We'll have to wait to see what happens there with that Force India. We're now looking at the Modena pair. Stevens still ahead of Scott Speed there. I think that was Nardi just coming into the pits, so maybe he did have an issue. We're now looking at Von Metal slowing down. And I believe that this is Cristiano Di Matta we're riding on board with. Di Matta pulling the car to the side of the circuit, and yet another retirement.
It looks like an engine failure on the Von Metal, so that's one of Ewan Gale's cars out of the race. Di Matta was running at the back of the field anyway, but not a good start to the season for Von Metal or for Cristiano Di Matta. Callum Ilott looks as though he's going to be coming into the pits. He's just locked up into the chicane. I think he lost a position actually to Scott Speed by the looks of it.
Well, Scott Speed has just come into the pits for what should be the first of his scheduled pit stops. And if he can't make his way past his teammate Will Stevens on track, maybe he can undercut his way through. It looks like strategy is going to become a big part of the racing today. And Danny Kvyat is right up behind Lopez now. They're coming up to back markers already. We're only on lap 22, and Lopez and Kvyat have had the speed to get up to the back markers already. And how's this going to play out for the Argentine and for the Russian? Now the back marker is going to get in the way and allow Kvyat to make an overtake. We're going to have to wait and see what happens here, but that's not what Lopez would want to see while he's trying to maintain the lead here. We're now looking at Alexander Rossi in 7th place. He's ahead of Martin Brundle by quite some distance, so he's got no threat from behind, but he's trying to close down Nick Heidfeld and teammate Callum Eilert ahead of him. But we're waiting to see who's going to come in on what lap. We still haven't seen a fuel load yet, Tom, so some will be pitting early while others will be going a bit longer, maybe even trying a one-stopper here.
Well, could Suttil's 2-stop strategy be the way to go? He's stuck behind at the moment Robert Wickens, which isn't going to do him many favours really, so he's got to hope he passes him on track, or that Wickens, Conway and Brundle all pitting at the end of the lap. And this is Neil Yarney, who is under pressure from Alex Wirtz, who continues his recovery, has got through there. I think he may well have done actually, yes, so that's another manoeuvre into that left-hander for the Austrian.
And Mike Conway has just come into the pits, as has Nick Heidfeld. So that has promoted Suttil up a couple of places. He's right behind Robert Wickens in the Leighton House, and he will want to get through as soon as possible, as all the time he's stuck behind these cars that haven't pitted yet and that are all on older tyres. He is losing time to Lopez and Kvyat at the front. But at the same time, they're both trying to make their way through the traffic. They've already dispatched Andrea Moda of, I think, those Taki Inoue. They had to get past first. And Martin Brundle, though, with a bit of a lock-up, but still holding on to 7th place. Alex Zanardi comes into the pits. He pitted earlier for a problem that he had, and he's now coming in for a scheduled pit stop, trying to stay on strategy. And looks like we got a move behind there. It looks like Wickens is still holding off Adrian Suttil. Suttil getting really annoyed at this point, as he wants to make the undercut on Lopez and Kvyat's work. And Al Unser Jr. getting in the way of the leading duo there. Lopez trying to find his way through, but Kvyat has not found his way through. And Kvyat shaking his fist at the Force India there. Lopez saying thank you very much, I'm off. But Danny Kvyat, he's stuck behind the Force India. He's found his way through now. But Tom, that was not a good move there from Al Unser Jr.
No, it was a really, really silly driving really, and that's cost Kvyat crucial time. And not good in his battle with Adrian Suttil either, because Suttil, who, although he's still stuck behind Robert Wickens, that's not going to do Kvyat any favours in terms of when he comes in for his pit stop. But I do feel that Lopez and Kvyat are going to be on a one-stop strategy. Suttil looks to be on the 2. And if Suttil is going to make the 2-stop strategy work, he needs to get by Wickens and Brundle as soon as possible.
I think Adrian Suttil was very dependent on getting some clear air here when he came in for his pit stop. That has not worked out for the HRT. He is in amongst this gaggle of cars. You can see there in the foreground just briefly, he is still behind the Leighton House of Robert Wickens. And, I think just saw up ahead, Suttil had another look there. And Wirtz, meanwhile, is having a look at Marcus Winkelhock for 10th place. Wirtz trying to get back up into points-paying positions. And here is Danny Kvyat riding on board with a Pacific. And you can see there just how much time he has lost to the Euro run of Jose Maria Lopez. And how soon will he be able to catch up to the back of him? We'll have to wait and see, but they should be coming up to their first pit stops within the next few laps, you would have thought. But yes, I agree with you, Tom. I think these two are on one-stoppers, while Suttil very clearly on a two-stopper.
Yeah, and Suttil still behind Wickens at the moment. I mean, he needs to do what Wirtz has done a couple of times and get past the Leighton House of Wickens. On track, you can see there in the battle for 8th, Wickens, the Canadian, holding up the German. That is Adrian Suttil behind him. And I think the back straight is going to be Suttil's best chance to do it.
You mentioned earlier, Tom, this track is proving to be very difficult to overtake on. It is a fast-flowing circuit, but it sort of has a feel of a karting circuit to me, where it's got good corners, but not necessarily the right overtaking opportunities. And we're now looking at Adrian Suttil having another look at Robert Wickens, but still not able to find a way through. That is costing him momentum as he comes on to the main straight, riding on board with Alexander Rossi here. Pretty much all on his own in 6th place. He's 2.5 seconds behind his teammate Callum Eilert, but about 16 seconds ahead of Martin Brundle. Rossi running a bit of an anonymous race here, in the LaRousse. Now the LaRousse team, they endured a double DNF at the pre-season festival, which didn't do their team manager Will Knight any favours. So when it came to the upgrades for this race, he elected to go more heavily towards reliability, and so far as we approach the halfway mark, that is paying off. His team is running 5th and 6th place. But Tom, I'm sure that just somewhere in the back of his mind, he might be a bit worried that his team might not get to the end here.
I'm just continuing to look at Suttle at the moment with Wickens. Suttle's still not able to get by Wickens on that back straight. So this is losing Suttle more and more time. You can see there Will Stevens in 3rd place. Coming up to a few back markers now. That looks like Taki Inoue and the Force India, what looks like Al Onsa Jr. or Alex Sinardi. Probably will be Sinardi actually, because he was the one that came in early on. This, you can see Enrique Binaldi locking up there in the sole surviving Fon Natal.
Not really a good moment there for Enrique Binaldi. He's already had a few issues earlier on in this race trying to get on top of the handling of his car, but he's down in the lower reaches of the field. Doesn't look like he's going to score points today unless some major attrition happens in this race and he can work his way into it. And that's Jose Maria Lopez. Lopez is off the circuit from the lead. It looks like he pointed the wrong way and just simply spun it, and he's climbed out of the car, and Jose Maria Lopez, who was fighting for the race victory here, is out. And Tom, that looks to me like that's just a simple driver error. He was facing the wrong way, which to me suggests that he simply spun it into the gravel trap.
Yeah, it looks like a very rookie mistake there from Jose Maria Lopez. He just carried too much speed into the right-hander, and the rear tyres locked and spun off into the gravel trap. So that's a very costly mistake there for Lopez, who was in the running for the Grand Prix for the race win today. Now that's not going to be able to be the case. And Danica Fiat, just like he did so in the non-championship race in Vancouver, leads the League 2 race in Taupo, but will he be able to keep it?
This is the sort of pressure that you can be under when you are leading a race such as this. In Danny Kvyat's case in Vancouver, he was out on his own, about 20 seconds in the lead, but he lost the back end and span it into the barrier. And in the case of Jose Maria Lopez, now under pressure from Danny Kvyat, who's trying to get back up to the back of the Europe run after the earlier fight through the traffic. Lopez now appearing to have spun it into the gravel trap on his own. Kvyat now leads the race. Not necessarily the net race lead just yet, depending on what happens when Suttle works his way through again, but judging by the gap that Suttle has to the leader, about 33.1 seconds at the moment, Tom, when Kvyat does pit, I imagine that Suttle's going to be way behind him.
Yeah, I think, with Kvyat having clear track in front, I mean, the gap between Kvyat in the lead and Suttle, who is now in 8th place, is what looks like 35 seconds, or just under that at the moment. So that's more than enough for Kvyat to keep hold of the lead when he comes in for what looks like his only stop of the race. Suttle still cannot find a way.
Tom, we've got problems with Danny Kvyat. The second race leader has dropped out within the space of a couple laps each other. Danny Kvyat, this time not spinning out to the lead, but retiring with a mechanical issue from the lead. And I would love to know what's happened to Pacific there, but Danny Kvyat once again out from the lead. The speed is there for the Pacific, but in the 2 races we've had one driver error and one mechanical issue. And Tom, look who's in the lead now, debutant Will Stevens in the Modena.
And he's yet to pit as well, so could he be on a one-stop strategy? And if he is, he's very much the favourite to win this race, because even though Adrian Suttle's in 7th place now, and he was one of the top 3 in the early part of the race, he's still got another stop to make, I think, as well. So surely this race, he's very much in Will Stevens' hands. On his debut, the last-minute replacement for Lewis Bassendale's team, he could be on course for the victory here now.
That would be quite something, wouldn't it? AJ Foyt, previously running at the team at the pre-season festival and at the non-championship round at Vancouver, and he now is a real contender for a Grand Prix victory. And Lewis Bassendale, he did make a late call to replace AJ Foyt with Will Stevens. Stevens not having raced in Formula 1 since 2015 when he was with the Marussia team. He's now back in a Formula 1 car. Here's Adrian Suttle, still not able to get past Robert Wickens. He's getting really frustrated there in that HRT. Will Stevens, in his first race in a Grand Prix World Series without any preparation whatsoever. He's 6 seconds ahead, and we've got an issue here between Neil Jarney, and I think that was one of the lights. That would be Mark Blundell. That might be the same as what happened earlier with Alex Zanardi and Cristiano Di Matteo. It looks like Jarney and Mark Blundell have tripped up over each other on pit entry.
Yeah, this is another problem with the pit entry at the moment, and drivers who peeling into the path of another driver who's probably still circulating around the circuit as normal. And yeah, I think that's another issue though. As you can see, the Pacific continuing to be pulled away there. Kvyat's car. That's both of the Pacifics out of the race now, so not a good start to the season for Carter McCollum.
And that looked to me like the marshals had pulled off Danny Kvyat's car from his retirement earlier on. And given that he was near the pit exit, it looks like to me they've elected to reposition his car on the outside of the circuit instead, which I think is actually a very smart move for the marshals, because if someone goes off of that section of the track with a car stuck on the inside, you don't really want that to happen, because that can cause more damage to the car that goes into it. And we've had it again. Robert Wickens pitting from 5th, and was that with Adrian Sutil? Sutil getting caught up with Robert Wickens as he came into the pit. And yeah, we're seeing this quite a few times with this track now. That's the 3rd time we've had 2 cars coming together on pit entry. The first time was with Zanardi and Di Matteo. The second time with Blundell and Jarney. And this time we've just seen it with Robert Wickens and Adrian Sutil. Sutil now released into clear air, 3.5 seconds behind Martin Brundle, but he's now almost half a minute off of Will Stevens, which I think Robert Wickens has basically cost Adrian Sutil any chance of victory here. Stevens, he's still got to make his one and only pit stop, and he will come out around about Martin Brundle, I reckon. But Sutil, he's not going to the end. He will have to make one more pit stop, and his 2-stop strategy, Tom, was very much reliant on him coming out into clear air after his first pit stop.
Yeah, and as you can see, the top 2 coming into the pit, both Will Stevens and Alex Rossi, the former Marussia teammates from Formula 1 in 2015. They're both in the pits now. So Martin Brundle, does he come in as well? I think he will do. So Adrian Sutil will take back the lead of the race, but for how much longer? Because he's got another stop to make.
Well, Stevens has just exited the pit lane. Sutil is there as well. Sutil's going to be on the warmer tyres, but Stevens is going to be on the fresh tyres. And there it is. Stevens is ahead of Sutil. So Wickens holding up Sutil earlier on means that Sutil's not taken the lead of this race. And we're sure that he does have to pit again. There are the 2 Colonis running in 3rd and 4th. They've been pretty quiet this race, but they've been going about their business and trying to keep themselves within the top 10. But I think they still have to pit later on as well. Will Stevens leading the Grand Prix now completely on merit, half a second ahead of Sutil, who's on older tyres and has to make one more pit stop. We have McNish and McCarthy in 3rd and 4th, Callum Ilott and Rossi in the LaRousses are 5th and 6th. Scott Speed, he's lost out in all of this. He was running behind Stevens earlier on. He's now in 7th behind the LaRousses. Heidfeld in 8th and Zach Speed ahead of Blundell in the Life in 9th, and Mike Conway rounding out the top 10 in the Real.
You can see Mike Conway locking up there into the left-hander. He's doing a fine race so far. Is Conway running in 10th place and on course for a decent points finish. But now this is very much in Will Stevenson's hands, because Adrian Sutil has got to stop again. Alan McNish, I believe, has made... I can't remember if McNish has made a stop already and needs to pit again. He probably doesn't need to pit again. But yeah, Sutil's going to have a fight on his hands to even get a decent points finish out of this.
It's looking very good for Will Stevens at the moment on debut in the Grand Prix World Series. And I suppose in some ways, Tom, it is a debut for a lot of these drivers, because they did all race in Vancouver, but when the decision was taken to make that a non-championship race, everyone has come to Taupo on 0, so effectively this is the first official round of the season, and Will Stevens, should he go on to win this race on debut, he will be leading the championship. At the moment, as it stands, Jose Maria Lopez is leading the championship by virtue of the 1 point that he picked up for pole position. He is out of this race, having spun out on his own earlier on. A real shame there for David Jones and the Eurobron team, with Winkelhock down in 13th place. It now looks like they're going to have to rely on a bit of attrition to score any points here now. Alan McNish there in 3rd place, and McCarthy now comes into the pits. So there is a pit stop for Coloni. McCarthy dropping out of the top 4 there. Eilert is now into 4th place ahead of his teammate Alexander Rossi. And this is going to promote Martin Brundle into the lead when Conway comes out. McCarthy going to be on the fresher tyres, and he can now go to the end. Will he be able to make his way up back into points paying positions? We'll have to wait and see. And meanwhile at the front, Will Stevens pulling out 0.2 of a second over Adrian Suttil in the last sector alone. And now making those fresher tyre works now that he's got them up to temperature. Suttil, I think his chance of winning this race is pretty much gone, barring any sort of late drama.
I'd have to agree with you there, Topher. And if Suttil was to pit now, he would rejoin in 13th behind Alex Wirtz, who has made his first scheduled stop. I think that's going to be his last stop of the race. But yeah, Suttil's chances of the race win are pretty much gone. It's just pretty much points on offer for the Hispania team. So it looks like Hispania, Pacific or Eurobron are not going to be coming away as the victors in Taupo. It looks like it could well be either Andrea Moda, Coloni or LaRousse.
Sorry, not Andrea Moda, Modena. Sorry, Andrea Moda is down in the lower reaches. That is Taki and Vincenzo.
And Modena, that's what I was meant to say, Modena.
So I get confused between those two as well, Andrea Moda and Modena. Both very similar teams in quite a lot of ways. And here is Alexander Rossi running in 5th place behind his LaRousse teammate Callum Eilert. Those two have been running line astern for a lot of this Grand Prix now. We're past the halfway mark and we've now got 25 laps left to run in this League 2 race. Still a long way to go, still a lot of action to happen. Will Stevens continues to lead out in front by almost a second now to Adrian Suttil. But with a long way to go, the win is anything but confirmed at this moment in time. Suttil, we believe, does have to come in for one more pit stop. The 2-stop strategy not appearing to be the way to go here in Taupo. And all of those on 1-stoppers are currently making it work.
So Will Stevens keeping Adrian Suttil busy at the moment. Well, Adrian Suttil keeping Will Stevens busy, as you should say. So they're coming up to the end of lap 35. Stevens' gap to Suttil is less than a second. As we've already mentioned, Suttil does have to make another stop. Will Stevens does not. So Stevens not having any trouble, no traffic up ahead of him at the moment. So he can just, not coast to the end, but just control the race as he's doing at the moment now. He's in real command of this one. You can see Alonso Jr., who's not doing too bad of a job in the Force India today, in 17th position. He's quite some way off the driver in front. Can't remember who it is in 16th place, as we're not showing on the graphic at the moment. It's just showing the top 15 at the moment on there. But yeah, it doesn't look as though Force India are going to score points today. But just got to hope they do better next time out in the next round of the championship, which is in Adelaide, Australia. So that's another segment. As you can see, Alex Rossi trying to make a move there on his British teammate Callum Eilert for 4th position, but Eilert having the high ground and keeping hold of that 4th place.
So yes, Tom, after this round we will be going off to Adelaide in Australia, a very popular circuit amongst our team managers. A lot of them very excited about the prospect of going back to the street circuit there. A new addition to the calendar that was just announced this morning actually, Tom. Yeonggam in South Korea is going to be added to the Grand Prix World Series calendar for this season. After Adelaide, we will be heading to Malaysia at the Sepang circuit, and then following that round, we will be heading off to South Korea at the Yeonggam International Circuit. And Wickens, they're trying to go into pits with an electrical problem. It's another issue there for the Leighton House team. Wickens tripping up over Winkelhock, I think that was, as he came into the pit. But this is not at all what Chris Cavani and the Leighton House team boss wants. He had Alexander Wirtz running up in the top 4 earlier on, and he went down the order with his own reliability issue. And now Wickens has made it back to pits with an electrical problem. They've done a Control-Alt-Delete of his car, and he's back out on his way. But both Wirtz and Wickens now outside of the top 10, and that is not how the Leighton House team wanted to start their season.
Well, that's very much Wickens' chance of points out of the windows. He just rejoins into the path of the Force India of Alonso Jr., who goes wide and spins.
And Wickens had just come out of the pit lane in front of Alonso Jr., and I don't believe there was any contact there. To me, that looked like Alonso was trying to get back into the slipstream of Wickens and simply understeered wide onto the grass. and then spun the car around. And we were talking about Alonso earlier, how he's in the high reaches of age, but he's still doing a commendable job. He was down in 17th place and running quite well. And with AJ Foyt's departure from the Modena team, Alonso Jr. is now the eldest driver on the grid. And Ed Spencer, the team boss of Force India, he wanted to bring in some experience into the team. And Alonso Jr., an absolute legend over in America, multiple IndyCar champion, multiple Indy 500 winner, one of the greatest there's ever been. But Tom, do you think it's gotten to a point now where you can have all the experience in the world, but once you get past your peak, that might be it?
Yeah, I have to agree with it. It's okay that you've still got the passion for motorsport, but there is a time where you have to call on your career, really, and there's other things that you can be doing. And there's a problem there for the one of the lives. Is that Martin Brundle? Is that Mark Blundell in trouble, or is that Finkelhock? I think that's Finkelhock actually in the.
I think it might be Finkelhock in the Eurobrun. Yeah, so if that is Finkelhock, we'll have to wait for confirmation on that. But that is both Eurobruns out of this race. And they've got a very fast car. Jose Maria Lopez put it on pole and was leading for a lot of this Grand Prix earlier on. And looking at the graphic, I'm not sure if it is Finkelhock actually. We'll have to wait for it to go through the sectors again to see if Finkelhock drops down the order. From what I can see, and yes, it is Finkelhock. There we have the confirmation. His car is on fire and he has gone into the wall on the main straight, and that is both Eurobruns out of this race.
So it's back to the drawing board for the Eurobrun team, and for their boss David Yunt, and for Jose Maria Lopez and Marcus Finkelhock, it's the end of their Taupo weekend. Not a good start to the season for the team, who I would say are one of the favourites to get promotion to League One for season 3. But yeah, that's not the ideal start to the season. Will Stevens continuing to lead over Adrian Sutil, but as we've already mentioned, Sutil's still yet to make his final stop. And it's Alan McNish in the Colony who will effectively move up into second, with Callum Ilott, Alex Rossi and Scott Speed making up the top 5 as a result of it. But there's still some way to go yet in this race. There's still 21 laps to go. You can see the top 2 in your picture.
And this is what we were talking about earlier, Tom, with the whole power versus reliability debate that the team managers have. You can build a very fast car, put a lot of money into the power, but that will be at the cost of reliability. And Eurorun, at the hands of David Yunt, he's very clearly built a fast car for this season, but lacking the reliability. And with the case of Jose Maria Lopez, he did drop it all on his own and retired as a result. That was more of a driving error. With Marcus Finkelhock having an engine issue there, it just shows that you can put money into the power development of the car, but that will be at the cost of reliability. Some team managers going the other way. They wanted a more reliable car to make sure they get to the end of races. And that was a trend we saw a lot in Season 1, wasn't it, Tom? A lot of team managers at the start of the season putting a bit more into power, thinking, oh yeah, more power's best, I want to run at the front. But then quickly realising you can have the power, but if you can't get to the end of the race, you're still going to score no points.
And whilst you say that, Adrian Sutil is coming for his final stop. Where is he going to filter back out? Is he going to still be in the points, or is he going to be outside the points?
Well, that has allowed Will Stevens to have a bit more clear air in front. Here is Alan McNish. Again, he's been having a very quiet race, but he's worked his way up into second place, and he's doing very well in the Colony. Callum Ilott and Alexander Rossi now fighting for a podium position between themselves, the Roos duo there. Adrian Sutil has come back out onto the track in 6th place. He's behind the Modena of Scott Speed. And here is Enrique Bernaldi under attack from Robert Wickens. Wickens came in earlier with an electrical problem and had to have a reset of his Leighton house. He's now looking to make up for lost time. And he's 18 seconds off at championship points at the moment, which with 20 laps to go is a bit of a tall order for a Canadian. He makes his way past Enrique Bernaldi in the Fonmetal, and the Canadian is through into 14th place. But as I said, this is going to be a very tall order for Robert Wickens if he wants to break into the top 10. Now riding on board with Callum Ilott, who's chasing down Alan McNish for 2nd place.
So the good news for Adrian Sutil is, unlike earlier, he's now in clear air, so he can set about setting some fastest laps to catch the Modena of Scott Speed. So which is now 15 seconds between those two, so Adrian Sutil hasn't got too much time to catch up to him, so he's going to have to rely on misfortunes of others to see him back into the top 5. It's a miracle actually to see him in the top 6 at the moment for Adrian Sutil, because we feared that he wasn't going to get any points out of this with his 2-stop strategy, but it seems as though he may well still get a decent points finish after all.
And meanwhile, we're looking here at the battle for the final points-paying position. Neil Jarney ahead of Nick Heidfeld and Mark Blundell. Jarney and Heidfeld, they're very good friends. They were teammates of the Rebellion team in the World Endurance Championship. They know each other very well. They respect each other. But now fighting for a championship point, I wonder how friendly that rivalry is going to get between the Real and the Zach Speed. We're riding on board now with Adrian Sutil in 6th place. And as you said, Tom, he's now got the clear air. All he has to do now is pump in some fastest laps and hope to close in that 15-second deficit to Scott Speed. Here is Will Stevens stuck behind back markers. That looks like an Andrea Moda that he's getting past. I couldn't quite tell which one that was, but Stevens working his way through the back markers, and he's cleared that one without any issues. He's now got clear air ahead of him. And Perry McCarthy making a mistake there into the chicane. He is riding behind Alexander Wurz and Martin Brundle. Wurz up into 8th place after his earlier issue. He's put in a very good stint here to get himself up into points-paying positions. And Wurz clearly one of the faster drivers on the grid with that Leighton House underneath him. And he's making that speed count as he tries to get as many championship points as he can. Alan McNish running in 2nd place. He's holding his own pretty well, actually. He's 5 seconds behind Will Stevens in the leading Modena. And you would have thought that Callum Ilott and Alexander Rossi behind in the LaRousses would be closing in on the Coloni, but Tom, McNish is doing very well there in 2nd place and keeping that gap to the LaRousses behind him.
Alan McNish doing a fine job from 11th on the grid to find himself up into 2nd place. And now we've had the likes of Kafia and the Eurobron of Lopez dropping out ahead of him, but he's done a very, very great race as the Scotsman. As you can see on Neil Yarney there battling with the Zach Speed of Nick Heidfeld and the life of Mark Blundell. That's a battle for the final points-paying position. You can see further ahead, Perry McCarthy, Alex Wurz and Martin Brundle fighting over 7th place. You can see Adrian Sutil setting a new fastest lap of 1 minute 13.0. That's going to give him the championship point come the end of the race.
Tom, sorry. We've had Nick Heidfeld going for a move there on Neil Jarney. We're going to have a look at the replay here. We're riding on board with Heidfeld and Zach Speed, but it looks like he's overshot, which coming up to the chicane now, and there was contact between them. Heidfeld trying to get up the inside of Neil Jarney in the Real, and he's got it all wrong, collided with the Real, and he's now put himself behind Mark Blundell in the Life. That was a bit of a reckless move there from Nick Heidfeld. Looks like he was getting a bit impatient there, trying to get 10th place away from Neil Jarney. And what were we saying earlier, Tom? Those two are really good friends from when they were together at Rebellion in the World Endurance Championship, and how they have good respect for each other. And then that goes and happens.
Well, as you say that, Taki Inoue's got a problem in the Andrea Modus. That could be the second of the cars out of the race.
Yeah, that is a suspension failure there for the Andrea Moda of Taki Inoue. And he wasn't really challenging anyway. And there goes the suspension proper. It's completely collapsed, has his rear left. The marshals need to get that off the circuit very quickly. They're there already. He was almost on the racing line with where he parked that one up. But that is Taki Inoue out of the Taupo Grand Prix. A shame there for the Japanese. Looking to build upon his season that he had last year. He was with the Forte Corse team. And he did score some points here and there, but ultimately he was one of the back markers. He came into Season 2 with high hopes of maybe challenging for top 10 on a more regular basis. But the first round of the championship, Tom, has not gone very well for him.
No, and I think for Nick Heidfeld, going back to the collision, you can see Mark Blundell down the inside there of Neil Yarney, and he's up into the points, so fantastic manoeuvre there from Blundell.
I think Neil Jarney may be having his rhythm broken a bit there by Nick Heidfeld's collision. And Tom, you're saying you're about to go back to collision there. In my point of view, I think Heidfeld was just getting a bit impatient trying to get past Jarney. Jarney's now had his rhythm broken, which has allowed Blundell to get through so quickly. But what's your take on that collision, Tom?
I thought it was a really clumsy manoeuvre from Heidfeld. He wasn't quite within a car's length alongside Jarney, and he's come back to it's backfired him completely. I mean, he completed the successful manoeuvre at that same corner with Nico Hulkenberg last year, but it didn't quite pay off that time. And Scott's speed is coming to the pits. That must be for a scheduled stop, I would imagine. And Adrian Suttle setting another fastest lap there. So whilst he's moved up into 5th place, he's now set a new fastest lap. So Adrian Suttle on course for the bonus points for the fastest lap.
And Suttle 13 seconds behind Alexander Rossi in 4th place. He's clearly got the speed at the moment, but we are running out of laps here in Taupo. There's about 14 laps left to go. And looking at the timings now, Alan McNish has actually been closing in on Will Stevens there. He's just closed in a bit more in that last sector. Before he was about 5.5 seconds behind the Modena. It's now down to 4.3. And this might be tyre wear starting to play a part here, Tom. We're starting to get towards the end of this race, 14 laps to go. And has Stevens maybe been pushing his tyres a bit too hard, I wonder?
I'd like to think he hasn't. He's got, just under 5 seconds over Alan McNish in 2nd place, so it's looking reasonably comfortable for Will Stevens. He's not got any traffic in front of him, and so he can just take it very, very easy. As you can see, the Force Indians back in the monster each other between Unser Jr. and Sinardi. I don't think Sinardi was able to complete the maneuver there. And whilst we say that, another fastest lap from Adrian Sutter. It's a 1 minute 12.8 for the German there. So he is making inroads on Alexander Rossi in 4th place.
This is becoming fascinating, isn't it, Tom? We've got Will Stevens here, who's looking to win on debut, having been drafted into the Modena team at the last minute. And we've got Alan McNish looking to take his first ever Formula 1 Grand Prix victory in a Cologne. And at the start of this season, Tom, when we were talking about the pre-season festival, we weren't really giving Scuderia Cologne much for hope in Alan. Actually, McNish has just got past Stevens. Stevens is dropping down. What's happened to him? He's off. Will Stevens has pulled over to the side of the circuit, and that is another race leader that has dropped out of contention, and that is his right rear suspension that is gone. That is such a shame for Will Stevens. He was looking great for a debut victory here. But once again, Tom, we've had a race leader drop out of the Taupo Grand Prix.
Well, if we saw so many in last year's race drop out, and now we're getting repeats of it. Lopez, Kafia, and now Stevens. And that promotes Adrian Suttle up into 4th place now with that retirement. And McNish is in the pits. What's happened to him?
Alan McNish pulls into the pits. We haven't quite seen what that's for yet. Oh, he had to come in to make a second pit stop. So he wasn't going to the end with McNish. I wasn't sure if he was or not. We've now just seen he has had to come in for his final scheduled pit stop. And that has now given LaRousse a 1-2. Callum Eilert is in the lead ahead of Alexander Rossi. Suttil is 11 seconds off the lead with about 12 laps to go. Nick Heifeld is now back on the rear end of Neil Jarni, so Heifeld is clearly faster than Real in his sack speed, but not able to find a way past the Swiss Indian. As we said earlier, Tom, this track has been very difficult to overtake on. Heifeld has tried left, right and centre, and also through Jarni at one point a couple of laps ago. But yeah, Heifeld not quite able to break through past Jarni.
No, and he's not even going to go. And Mark Blundell's pulled off in the live. What a shame for him.
And Blundell's got a puncture. I'm not really sure what would have caused that. There hasn't been any debris left about the circuit, so maybe just riding a curb too hard at some point. But Blundell now dropping out of this race. We have 15 runners left. Here is Alexander Wurz in 6th place, trying to get past Martin Brundle for 5th place and pick up some more championship points. Wurz having a brilliant recovery drive here. He was in 4th earlier on before a problem forced him into an unscheduled pit stop. That Leighton House clearly has a speed on it, as he's been able to work his way back up into 6th place. He could maybe now get past Martin Brundle for 5th, and Alan McNish has come out of the pits in 4th, 23.7 behind race leader Callum Eilert and on fresher tyres. So Suttil and McNish now trying to fight their way towards the front before the end of this race, and meanwhile the leading LaRousse there's a gap of less than a second between them.
And we've yet to have a 1-2 in the Grand Prix World Series as well, Topher. So could LaRousse become the first team to achieve that?
That is very true, Tom. We didn't have any 1-2 finishes in Season 1 of the Grand Prix World Series. We've now got 13 new teams that have entered this series for Season 2. And could we have one of those new teams doing it at the very first attempt? we talk a lot about the Retro Racing Managers League jinx that comes into effect, not just in the Grand Prix World Series, but in our 1990 season, in the Group C Challenge, in Tour Cars and everything. And I do not wish to put any sort of jinx on any of these sorts of drivers, but with 10 laps to go, and Lewis having a 1-2, Ilott ahead of Rossi, it is looking very good for Will Knight's team here, Tom.
And it's most definitely looking good for Will at the moment. And can those cars get to the end of the race? Now remember, they failed to finish in the pre-season festival, either of those cars. And I don't think either of them finished in the Vancouver race either, Topher, did they? Let me just have a look.
I'm just finding my paperwork here.
Which Ilott finished second, and Rossi finished. I think he dropped out.
Rossi retired towards the end. He was classified in 17th position, but Callum Ilott, he showed the speed that the LaRousse has. He finished in second behind race winner Adrian Sutil. And Tom, have a look at this gaggle of cars going on here. We've got Martin Brundle in fifth, with Wirtz right behind him, and then Perry McCarthy and Scott Speed all practically within a second of each other. Here is Adrian Sutil all out on his own, but now 8.3 seconds behind the leading LaRousses. Here is Alan McNish. He's looking to put a lap on the Force India there. I believe that is the Force India of Alex Zanardi that he has just gone past. And McNish on the fresher tyres making light work there of his Italian friend. Callum Ilott here still leading up ahead, and here is Mike Conway.
He's both back in the pits, Topher.
Yeah, Adrian Sutil back into the pits again. What's happened there to the German? Has that been a reliability issue, I wondered? He did come in for a second scheduled pit stop earlier, so I'm pretty sure that is a forced pit stop there for the HRT, which promotes Alan McNish into third place. Brundle's now running fourth and Wirtz in fifth. So I wonder what's happened to Adrian Sutil there. It must be some sort of reliability issue. We haven't seen it on the TV cameras. We've been focusing on the battles in the midfield. Here is Nick Heidfeld in the Zach Speed. He was looking to make a move on Neil Jarney. And Sutil's actually come out and split this battle here. I've only just seen that there. Adrian Sutil is behind Jarney and ahead of Heidfeld. Heidfeld's been spending a lot of this race trying to get past the Real of Jarney there. Sutil has come out in between them and is on fresher tyres, so should have no problems in getting past Jarney. But having said that, Tom, Jarney has been very defensive in this race, and successfully so.
Yeah, and he's going to have to use his experience to fend off a fast-charging Adrian Sutil. He'll be livid after making that unscheduled pit stop, and he's not going to be alongside him through here. He's not quite got the traction out of that hairpin there. Or can he do it here? Maybe able to do it here, Topher.
Well, we've cut away at just the wrong moment there, but looking at the graphics, Sutil has made it past Neil Jarney. And you're right, Tom, Sutil did not get the best traction coming out of the corner, but John Munro, having spent pretty much all of his budget on power, once Sutil got the power down, a bit of a lock-up there from Sutil. He manages to hold on to 8th place still. He got the car back together again. But going back to what I was saying about the power, John Munro, the team principal of HRT, put a lot of his budget into the power of the car. So on the straights, once Sutil managed to get out of the corner and get his foot down, he was able to get right up to the back of the Real and make the move through easily.
Now, can Adrian Sutil go after Perry McCarthy, who is, by the looks of the graphic, he's 9 seconds in front of Adrian Sutil. So he's going to run out of time, really, isn't he?
Well, looking at the front here, Callum Ilott's making a bit of a mistake into the final corner and locking up the tyres. He's very clearly under pressure here with Alexander Rossi, the 2016 Indy 500 winner, trying to take a maiden Grand Prix victory, as is Callum Ilott in second place. And we said earlier about the golden rule in Formula 1, don't take out your teammate. Here's Heidfeld having another look at Neil Jarney, still not able to find a way through. The golden rule of Formula 1, Tom, don't take out your teammate. And at the moment, Will Knight is going to be praying that those two drivers come home in first and second. He might not necessarily mind which way round they are, but as long as they both get to the end in first and in second, Will Knight's going to be a very happy boy.
And McNish is not really a threat to them because he's another 10 seconds behind those two, so even if they did squabble, they wouldn't lose that much time. And you can see Callum Ilott in front of Rossi. It's a brilliant camera view there of the Rich, just to show his facial expressions, just showing how determined he is to win this race. And it'll be a fantastic start to the season for LaRousse, getting a good haul of points. This could come crucial later in the campaign. And Alan McNish in 3rd place for Coloni and Perry McCarthy in 7th. It'll be a good haul of points for the Coloni squad and for Chris Buxton, the team manager of the team.
And Nick Heidfeld there in 10th place, getting very frustrated behind Neil Jarney. He won't have been at all happy to see that Mark Blundell, before his retirement, got past Neil Jarney so easily. And Heidfeld's been stuck behind Jarney for however many laps now. Here's Perry McCarthy having a look at Scott Speed for 6th place. This is a nice little gaggle of cars we've got going on here. This is headed by Martin Brundle in the Life. Life was another team, Tom, though we didn't really give much hope at the start of this season. And while Mark Blundell has retired, Martin Brundle's doing a fine job up in 4th place and is set to take home a good haul of points for the team.
Yeah, it's been a fine drive from Martin. He's very much on course for a good haul of points for the team. It'll be 12 points for both Brundle and for the Live squad. Very sure the team would have loved to see both cars home, but it's just going to be, by the looks of it, just the one here in Taupo. And Adrian Suthill had set another fastest lap of 1 minute 12.7, so cementing his chances of getting that bonus point with the fresher tyres he's got on. Is he going to run out of time to catch Perry McCarthy in 7th place?
Well, we are now on lap 55 out of 60 here in the League 2 race around Taupo in New Zealand. Only a few miles from the end of this race now, and there's a lot of interest throughout this field. Alexander Rossi looking to get past Callum Eilert. Nick Heidfeld again having a look at Neil Jarney there, but not able to find a way through. Adrian Suthill in 8th place has laid down another fastest lap. He says to take home the bonus point for that, but I'm sure that he would have wanted more than just the bonus points and the 8th place points, which will be 4, bringing his total to 5 on top of his fastest lap points. Suthill looking a good contender for the race victory earlier on before the 2-stop strategy scuppered his chances, and then the nail in his coffin being his reliability issue that forced him into an unscheduled pit stop. Suthill driving angry at the moment. He could have been a lot higher up and definitely on for a podium, but Tom, I think given the experiences he could take away from this race, he can still be confident that he will be a championship contender.
Yeah, and I think this is a sign of things to come for the Hispania team. I know with Franchitti dropping out, who hasn't quite shown the pace like Suthill has, but I wouldn't be at all surprised later in the campaign that Hispania do up the pace and take the fight to the likes of Pacific, Eurobron, and most definitely LaRousse.
And Perry McCarthy once again trying to get past Scott Speed for P6. This gang of cars here, they've been together for quite a few laps now, but there haven't been any overtakes. We've said it a couple of times now, Tom. This track has proven to be very difficult to overtake on. The cars can sort of get a nose down the inside and have a look, but with the way the track is laid out, the leading car is able to get the chop and cut off any advances.
Indeed, and whilst you say that, Adrian Suthill has caught the back.
Oh, sorry, Tom. There's a very close moment there between Wirtz and Scott Speed. Speed trying to get down the inside of the Leighton house, and once again Wirtz chopping him off. Very close to contact there between those two. And Tom, sorry to interrupt you, but I just had to point out what was going on
there. No, it's okay, and there's a 5-car queue now happening for 4th place between Martin Brundle, Alex Wirtz, Scott Speed, Perry McCarthy, and fast-charging Adrian Suthill. As you can see, Wirtz trying to pull out the slipstream there of the Brits, and can he complete the manoeuvre down this back straight? We've cut away from it, which is really, really annoying there.
Well, we do have the race leader here, Callum Eilert, still trying to hold off Alexander Rossi, and it looks like Rossi is starting to close in on his teammate. We've got a massive battle brewing for 4th place, as you say, Tom. Suthill on the fresher tyres and charging very hard, wanting to get past that gaggle of cars. Could potentially be up to 4th if he makes his way through all of them, but that will depend on how he picks his moments for overtakes. But we're now looking at the front, and Alan McNish with a bit of a lock-up there, but he's out on his own. He's under no pressure here and is on course for a podium in the first race of the season. At the front, there is a gap of 0.7 between Callum Eilert and Alexander Rossi. That is the main battle for the lead and for the race win. The two LaRousses not wanting to trip up over each other, but if Callum Eilert does make a mistake, you can be sure that Alexander Rossi will be doing everything he can to capitalise on that. Rossi is a very aggressive driver. We've seen that in his endeavours in IndyCar. He's won multiple races and he won the Indy 500 at his first attempt in 2016. So if he can find a way through past his teammates and can do it safely, that's what he will want to do. We're only a couple of laps away from the end here of the League 2 race at Taupo. Rossi, he did look like he was getting a bit closer to Ilop, and that's now dropped itself just a couple of tenths. Not quite able to get it up to the back of his British teammate. We're now looking again at this gaggle of 5 cars. Suttle not able to make any headway into this group. He's still behind the Colonia Perry McCarthy on fresher tyres, and Suttle, he'll be very frustrated in that HRT, Tom.
Yeah, I'll be very much frustrated. And here's Nick Heifeld. It looks like he's trying to make a move on Neil Johnny finally, but he's had a very frustrating race as Nick Heifeld. He's just, strategy has not been on his side, and he's been stuck behind traffic for far too long, and it's cost him dearly.
Well, Neil Johnny driving a very good defensive race, and he is on course for 2 championship points here for the Real team, headed up by Ed Hunter. He was saying earlier in the live chat that he felt so Johnny was holding up the gaggle of cars behind him to allow teammates Mike Conway to close up on this battle. Conway is in 11th place and 1.8 seconds behind Nick Heifeld. So not quite close enough for an overtake yet, but if Conway can find an opportunity to get past the Zach Speed, he will do everything in his power to be able to do so. We are now on the penultimate lap here at Taupo, and Tom, we look like we're on course for what will be a very famous 1-2 finish.
Yes, and I'm interested to see if Suttle can get by the Colonia Perry McCarthy for 7th. He's on the backstraight behind him. I just wonder if he's completed the manoeuvre at the end of the backstraight. He probably hasn't done so. And I don't think Nick Heifeld's going to get by nearly on it, or is he? No, he's just too far back to have a go there.
Well, he had a look at it. The opportunity was there, but Johnny once again just chopping off the German in the German-led car of Zach Speed. It is a German manufacturer that is on the grid. And Heifeld, he's still on course for 1 championship point, but I feel as though maybe he could have advanced a bit further through the field had he been able to dispatch Johnny earlier. And the 2 LaRousses are coming up on the back of Enrique Bernaldi. They're in the sole remaining Fond Metal. Let's just hope that the Brazilian doesn't have any part to play in the final outcome of this race, as Callum Ilott comes around to start the final lap.
And Suttle's got by McCarthy and Topher.
And finally, Adrian Suttle has made his way past Perry McCarthy in the Colony. We've got Scott Speed down the inside of Alexander Wirtz, and he's made the move stick. We're finally getting some overtakes here at Taupo. Scott Speed trying to make his way past Wirtz. Wirtz has managed to hold on around the outside though, and he's making the power advantage of the Leighton House count down the straight. So Wirtz holds on to 5th place. Martin Brundle's still there in 4th, just trying not to go off the track. He's trying to withstand the pressure behind him. And Suttle, he's now made his way up into 7th position ahead of Perry McCarthy. And McCarthy's actually back through on Suttle looking at the graphic. Perry McCarthy taking back 7th place. That's not really going to do Suttle's temper any favours. But we're now looking towards the front of the field. There's just a few corners left for Callum Ilott and Alexander Rossi to complete the first ever Grand Prix World Series 1-2. Bernaldi looks like he's not going to have any part in the outcome of this race. He's a bit too far ahead. We've got to navigate the last few corners here. And Will Knight, he's going to be jumping up for joy at this. Callum Ilott comes out to the final corner and crosses the line to win the League 2 race in Taupo. And he leads Alexander Rossi for a 1-2 finish for the LaRousse team. A perfect start to the season for Will Knight and his squad. McNish is going to come through in 3rd place. A fantastic result there for the Scotsman driving for Scuderia Coloni. And here is that gaggle of cars that are all fighting over 4th place. Sutter will have wanted to make his way through that field earlier. He got past Perry McCarthy for a couple of corners, but McCarthy making his way back through for 7th place. And we're looking at the race winner Ilott, but I believe that Brundle has now crossed the line in 4th, ahead of Alexander Wirtz, Scott Speed, Perry McCarthy, and Adrian Suttle, try as he might, could only come home in 9th place. And Neil Johnny will hold on for 9th place ahead of Nick Heidfeld, who takes home 1 championship point.
And Suttle will also get the point for the fastest lap, but that's only a consolation for him. He would have hoped for much better from this race. He thought a win was there for the taking, but got the strategy wrong, and you ended up making 3 pit stops as a result of it at least, and came home with just the 5 points in the end. So a disappointing race for Hispania, but a phenomenal race for the LaRousse team. A perfect start to the season for Will Knight.
And 13 cars finishing on a lead lap at the end of that. 15 finishes, only 2 were lapped. Here are the final results. Callum Ilott ahead of Alexander Rossi for a LaRousse 1-2, ahead of McNish and Coloni. Martin Brundle held on for 4th place ahead of Alex Burtz. Scott Speed, Perry McCarthy and Adrian Sutil should have achieved more, but very disappointed with 8th place. Neil Jarney in 9th ahead of Nick Heidfeld in 10th. He will have wanted to take more away as well. Mike Conway just missing out on points in 11th place ahead of Wickens, Benoldi, Zanardi and Unser finished 1 lap down. Then we have Blundell, Stevens, Inoue, Winkelhock, Kvyat, Lopez, D'Amata, Glock, Bird, Sospiri and Frank Kitty all retiring from the race. And Tom, that was a very exciting first race. Not a lot of overtaking, but definitely plenty of battles. And I think that potentially bodes well for the League One race coming up.
Well, yes, and these are in my opinion, the faster cars that we're about to see in League One. Will the championship outright get off to the best of starts as it did so in Season 1 in Kyalami? I'm confident we're going to be in for a cracker of a race here in Taupo for this field, and most definitely for the Proston Super Aguri boys.
Well, we will have to wait and see what happens. I don't really want to big up our own teams too much, Tom. You know what happens when we start doing that. But anyway, the League One race is coming up very shortly. We're going to take a quick break. Make sure that you stick around for League One race coming up in about 5 minutes' time.
Ah, what music!
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
We won't be out long.
Take your time. Track's all yours.
You ready?
The name on the middle of that steering wheel should tell you that I was born ready. Hit it. Attaboy.
Let me drive. I will make a fool out of you.
I got a message for all of them. Shake and bake.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind?
That just happened.
These cars, you sit in a box, a coffin, gasoline all around you. It is like being inside a bomb.
It's tough enough being a girl on the track. Living in my dad's shadow doesn't help much.
You have to be kind to the car. You feel the poor thing groaning underneath you.
No race was ever won in the first corner.
I'm going to give you an engine low to the ground, extra big oil pan will cut the wind from underneath you. That'll give you 30 to 40 more horsepower.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
Brakes are warm. Tires are warm.
I'll work in the cars and I'll drive and I'll eat and sleep and I'll work in the cars and I'll drive.
Damn fast, and when he runs so close together, it requires fantastic concentration and rather special skills.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
If you're going to push a piece of machinery to the limit and expect it to hold together, you have to have some sense of where that limit is.
Besides, the best drivers don't dwell on the future or the past. The best drivers focus only on the present.
They could never have imagined it, those pioneers who invented the automobile, that it would possess us like this in our imaginations, our dreams.
I'm gonna give you a fuel line that will hold an extra gallon of gas. I'm gonna shave half an inch off you and shape you like a bullet.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
Racing is in my blood.
I was put on this earth to race cars.
I accept every time I get in my car. There's 20% chance I could die, and I can live with it, but not 1% more.
No, Nicky, don't bring the percentages into this. Don't be a pro. The minute you do that, you kill what's good about this. You kill the sport.
And at that speed, your reactions can barely keep up with these sudden changes in direction.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up?
You want me to work the pit and you drive? Fine, we'll try that.
The car's a living, breathing thing, and she's alive.
If any of us imagined, really imagined, what it would be like to go into a tree at 150 miles an hour, we would probably never get into the cars at all. None of us.
Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
I am just as good as anybody out there on that track, and I don't need anybody to win my races for me.
I wish my daddy were alive to see this, to feel this. And when we get you prime painted and weighed, you'll be ready to go out on that racetrack. You hear me? You're gonna be perfect.
You don't understand what happens, do you? They make 10,000 cars, they make them exactly the same way, and 1 or 2 of them turn out to be something special. Nobody knows why.
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
So it has always seemed to me that to do something very dangerous requires a certain absence of imagination.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
Soon you will know what it is like to be defeated by the hands of somebody who is truly better than you.
The only thing to do here is to drive just as fast as you know how and hope your car doesn't break.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
If you ain't first, you're last. There's 40 other vultures out there who managed to finish the race on their tires. You see Darren Waltrip using up his tires?
There's nothing I can't do with a race car.
But hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? Come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
Sometimes you could swear the whole thing's falling to bits.
No pressure, Nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
On the other hand, I suppose potential problems are in the back of your mind all the time.
So in many ways, I feel responsible for what happened. And
You were, but trust me, watching you win those races while I was fighting for my life, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
You're so lucky. You sit there all closed in by machinery and bolts, precise things. There's hardly any room for you. It must be a nice, safe feeling.
Yeah, you gotta learn to trust something. Might just as well be the seat of your pants.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Well, we can drive. We can drive beyond the limits of the tires, the engine, the car, anything else.
look out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes, every gear change, every corner. Perfect. You see it.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
But it isn't just business, is it? What we do. It's passion, love, which is why we're prepared to risk our lives for it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Why does everybody keep telling me what my problem is?
That you get so emotional.
You would never, ever say that to a guy.
If you don't leave your feelings off the track, you're never going to get what you want.
I'm a race driver, and I can win it on my own.
Please let me race.
Fine. Then let's race.
Hello everybody, we are back for the League 1 race here at Taupo. We've already had a fantastic League 2 race, which was won by Callum Ilott in the LaRousse ahead of teammate Alexander Rossi. The first ever 1-2 finish in the Grand Prix World Series. So a landmark achievement there for Will Knight and the LaRousse team, and we send our congratulations to him for that result. And just one parish notice from that particular race. There was an incident between Nick Heidfeld and Neil Jarney, where Heidfeld tried to go down the inside of Jarney into the chicane and hit the Swiss Indian and spun the car as a result. There's no further action. It has been put down as a racing incident. The stewards feeling as though that Heidfeld spinning his way out of the position was enough of a penalty. So a line is drawn under that race now. Callum Ilott wins ahead of Alexander Rossi and Alan McNish picking up a podium for the Scuderia Coloni team. And now, Tom, we look ahead to League 1. And this is one where we have all of the already established teams in the Grand Prix World Series. We saw a glimpse of how they were all going at the non-championship race at Vancouver. We saw who were the potential frontrunners. And for this race, we have the home hero Brendan Hartley on pole position. Do you think that the Season 1 vice-champion can convert this into a victory on home soil?
I'm confident that he will do so. I think he's going to need some lady luck on his side to come away victorious on home turf. And if he's going to come away with this championship, he needs to get off to the best of starts, because I think he failed to finish in 4 of the first 5 races in Season 1. He fell so far behind the likes of John-Eric Verne and that. But he came back towards the end of the championship to finish runner-up, and now he'll be looking to go one better in Season 2.
He did have a very slow start to the season last time out, but that second half of the season he puts in was probably the stint of the championship, in my opinion, in terms of getting the points on the board. Came away with a couple of wins, and he's looking to carry on that form into the beginning of Season 1, and he's done that in the best way possible by putting it on pole position. And one driver change, we mentioned this earlier, but just to remind you for the League 1 race, Brendan Hartley's teammates has changed hands. It will no longer be Tom Cruise. He was only in for the Vancouver race to collect some real-life footage for his upcoming movie. He went all the way to the end of the race in Vancouver and got some amazing footage, and we can't wait to see what that film looks like when it is released. And Manor has drafted in fellow American Marco Andretti into the Manor team. Andretti eligible as a result of his test for Honda back in 2006. He will now get his first crack at racing in Formula 1. And Tom, how do you see Andretti doing in this race?
I think he'll do fine. I mean, I haven't seen the quali results yet, but I'm confident he'll do as good of a job as the likes of the LaRousse boys and Alan McNish and the Coloni as it did in League 2. So if he can get a podium finish on his debut, that would be a fantastic start to his life in the Grand Prix World Series.
Well, before we go down to the grid, we can go through the order for you now, the order in which they will line up for round 1 of the season. And it is Brendan Hartley who is on pole position, as we've already said, ahead of Kevin Magnussen, who is on pole in Vancouver. Takuma Sato, the qualifying king from Season 1, in third ahead of Buemi. Then we've got the Super Guri ahead of Antonio Felix da Costa ahead of Pedro de la Rosa in the Prost. Simona Di Silvestro, the winner in Vancouver on row 4, there ahead of Paul di Resta. Nico Hulkenberg and Alex Albon line up on row 5 ahead of Kobayashi and Pietro Fittipaldi. Both arrows are going to the top 10 there. Dixon ahead of reigning champion Jean-Eric Verne on row 7. Then Lotterer in the BMS ahead of Jamie Whincup in the Simtek. Robin Fraine's second Super Guri lines up on row 9 alongside Jaime Alguersuari. Mika Salo in 40 Corsi ahead of the Minardi of Jos Verstappen on row 10. Row 11 will be Marco Andretti and Tom Christensen. Andretti hoping to be further up on his debut. Nakajima and Jeff Gordon will line up on row 12 for the Taupo race. And we have Nicola Larini there heading up the last row there ahead of Tatiana Calderon. We're now down on the grid waiting for lights to go out. And there is Tatiana Calderon, hoping to have a bit more speed from the Lola, given that it was a race-winning team last time out in Vancouver. The red lights come on. We're waiting for the start of this League One race, and they are away. Brendan Hartley leads away from pole position. And look at Sebastian Buemi. He's had a fantastic start. Buemi shooting through from 4th into 1st off the line. What a move there for the BAR, the reigning champion team, headed up by Tom Butterworth, showing their speed straight away here. Buemi going from 4th to 1st off the line. A little bit of a traffic jam going through turn 1 there. But again, it looks like everyone's made it through safely without any issues. A very clean start all around, as was in the League 2 race. Magnussen is into 2nd place ahead of Brendan Hartley. Hartley not having the start that he wanted from pole position. And all of these guys trying to get some tarmac to themselves. Robin Frames down amongst the 40 Corsi there. He'd want to be further up the field than he was on the grid. But Sebastian Buemi, he was dropped by the BAR team halfway through last season due to a string of drive errors. And Tom, look at the gap that he's got already. It's 3.7 seconds after half a lap.
An amazing start to the season for Sebastian Buemi. He was leading this race for quite some time. He was the leader for ever so long. Now can he keep hold of it all the way to the checkered flag? Kevin Magnussen keeping hold of his 2nd place at the moment, ahead of Brendan Hartley's down to 3rd from pole. Da Costa in 4th and De La Rosa in 5th.
And as I was saying, Sebastian Buemi, he was dropped from the BAR team halfway through last season. He did the first 6 races of the season and spun multiple times out of race-challenging positions. And Tom Butterworth took the decision to drop Buemi in favour of Pascal Wehrlein for the remainder of the season. Wehrlein didn't fare too much better. He got points on the board, but wasn't really challenging all that often towards the front of the field. So for Season 2, Tom Butterworth took the decision to bring back Sebastian Buemi alongside reigning champion Jean-Eric Verne. Verne not having the best start to his title events. He's outside of the top 15 at the moment. He would have wanted to start it further up the field. Had a bit of a problem in qualifying and wasn't really able to get the most out of the BAR. But Sebastian Buemi, 3.5 seconds in the lead, showing just what the reigning champions are capable of in Season 2.
So Sebastian Buemi continuing to lead, 3.6 seconds in front of Kevin Magnussen. It's Hartley in 3rd, maintaining his place there ahead of Da Costa and De La Rosa. Sato's dropped back somewhat. He hasn't had the best of starts, and neither has Simona Di Silvestro in the MasterCard Lola.
And Di Silvestro, let's not forget, was the race winner in Vancouver. She had a fantastic outing there, and it was a shame for the MasterCard Lola team and team principal Alain Charles that the race did not count towards a championship. If you're just tuning into the Grand Prix World Series, we had the first race of the season in Vancouver last week, but after an issue with the pit lane caused multiple retirements across both leagues, the decision was taken to null and void the results, and no championship points were awarded. So Simona Di Silvestro effectively should be the leader of the championship, but no points were awarded out of that race, so everyone's starting from 0. And we have Brendan Hartley, who's taking the lead in the championship by virtue of scoring 1 point for pole position. And Di Silvestro, she will want to make up for that loss of her 25 points. She's running in 8th place. There's still a chance for her to get a good result here, but there's a long way to go. We are only on lap 3, and we ride on board with Brendan Hartley, the pole sitter. He lost out to the fast-charging Sebastian Buemi and to the AGS of Kevin Magnussen off the line. Brendan Hartley now looking to get back into a rhythm and make his way back up towards the front of the field. And there is Takuma Sato and Alexander Albon making a move on Pedro De La Rosa. De La Rosa losing 2 positions there from 5th place. Nicola Larini in the Midland Racing having a bit of an issue at the bottom end of the field, locking up through the corner there. And Buemi's still holding a lead of 3.5 seconds here. He got a lightning start from the line, built up the gap, and he can now just settle into a rhythm and try and hold on to this lead.
And De La Rosa's in the pits with a problem. I'm not sure what that is all about. I was just going to say, he lost time, didn't he, De La Rosa? I think he may have had an electrical problem or something, but either way, not a good start to the race for De La Rosa, but at least he'll have some clear track out in front of him. But he's got a mountain to climb to rescue anything from this race.
And we had a little bit of argy-bargy there between Mika Salo and Kazuki Nakajima in the Onyx. Nakajima looked like he's trying to get through the inside of the 40 Corsi of Salo. The wheels touch a little bit of an airborne moment there, but to me it looks like they've all got away without any major damage. Here is Brendan Hartley trying to close down on Kevin Magnussen, and I think you're right, Tom. De La Rosa must have had an issue that forced him into the pits. We saw that he dropped down behind Takuma Sato and Alex Albon on the straight. I thought at the time that he had just got a bad exit out of the corner, but as it turns out, there was a mechanical issue. He has now made it back to the pits and is back out on the circuits again. And as it stands, as we start the 5th lap, all 26 drivers are still in this race.
Yeah, and Sebastian Buemi continuing to maintain that 3.5 second margin over Kevin Magnussen in second place. Up to, well, Hartley's third, DaCosta's fourth, and Sato moving up to fifth as a result of De La Rosa coming into the pits for that early pit stop. We need to see what lap times De La Rosa can start putting in, really. And given the mixture of strategies we had in the League 2 race, I wonder what the League 1 teams are going to have for this, and I don't know whether that's influenced them to basically go on that one-stop strategy, or, you know, do they have something else up their sleeve?
Well, the team managers do watch the League 2 racing and trying to get any sort of idea of how the race will go that they can. And they would have seen in the League 2 race that the one-stop strategy was the way to go around here. We had the likes of Will Stevens, Danny Kvyat all going for a one-stop strategy, and it was paying off until their retirements. And ultimately, the LaRousse duo took a 1-2 finish with both Callum Eilert and Alexander Rossi going on a one-stop strategy. The HRT of Adrian Sutton attempted a two-stop strategy, but when it came to his first pit stop, he fell into traffic, which meant he couldn't get any clear air to put in any fast laps, as Kevin Magnussen puts in the fastest lap of this race. And ultimately, that put pay to any chance of Sutton winning the race. He had to make an unscheduled pit stop later on, which took him down into 8th place, and he was unable to make his way past the gaggle of cars that we had from 8th to 4th. But it just shows, Tom, that maybe this time around the teams will be thinking that the one-stopper is the way to go again.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would imagine that De La Rosa is going to put in a fast time very, very shortly. I know Kevin Magnussen has only just set a new fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 13.2. It's not quite the 1 minute 12.7, I think it was, that Adrian Sutton had set in the League 2 routing, although he was on a fresh set of tyres on low fuel. But nevertheless, it's definitely some good pace from Magnussen so far that'll help him catch Sebastian Buemi up front. And I wonder if Buemi could be on a lighter fuel load than Magnussen, which could justify the pace he's setting at the moment in comparison to Magnussen and Hartley.
You know what, Tom? I was just thinking the same thing myself. Buemi gets a lightning start off the line from 4th, straight into lead at the first corner. And I was just thinking to myself, maybe that could be a lighter fuel load for the Swiss. Magnussen is starting to close down the gap on Buemi a bit now. It's now down to 3.3. It was 3.5 a couple of laps ago, so a little bit of an inroad into the lead that Buemi has, but not really too much to write home about at the moment. But fuel strategies will play a big part in this. I imagine lots of drivers will be going on the one-stop strategy under the influence of how Callum Eilert won the League 2 race. But it remains to be seen. Buemi might be attempting a two-stopper himself, like Sutton tried to do. The only problem that Sutton had was coming out into traffic at the end of his first stop. Maybe Buemi a bit more confident that he can make a two-stopper work if he can find a clear air, but that's only a maybe at the moment. We haven't seen their fuel strategies yet. And Tom Butterworth, the team principal of BAR, taking something of an executive decision here from what I've seen. He says he's taken a decision to feed Jean-Eric Vergne whatever Sebastian's having for breakfast for the rest of the season. I mean, to me, it looks like Buemi definitely had his Weetabix this morning as he surged through into lead from pole position. Vergne down in 15th place. Vergne is the reigning champion of the Grand Prix World Series, and 15th place, Tom, not where he wants to be.
No, he qualified well down, didn't he, Jean-Eric Vergne? I don't think Taupo was his favourite circuit last year, and it's definitely not his favourite circuit this year. And he's got his work cut out to even get a point out of this in 15th place. In contrast, Sebastian Buemi, as you can see in your picture, continued to lead in front of the AGS of Kevin Magnussen.
Well, the model of Jean-Eric Vergne's championship-winning campaign was very much consistency. He was almost never the outright fastest driver. He did win 4 races across the course of season 1, but more than anything, he was consistently picking up points elsewhere. Podium positions, 4th places, 5th places. He was always there or thereabouts, and that is ultimately what won him the title. Brendan Hartley came through as the vice-champion of season 1, but fell too far behind in the earlier parts of the campaign with a string of retirements, and by the time that Hartley found his form and started winning races, it was already too late, and Vergne has just been putting points across the board left, right and centre, and came away with the season 1 title. And now his campaign this time round, not off to the best start. He's down in 15th place behind the debutante Jamie Whincup in the Syntec, once again being run by Scott Woodward. And here is Jamie Whincup trying to get past Jos Verstappen in the Minardi. This season Minardi is being taken over by Teapot, taking over from Alex Goldschmidt, who headed up that team to race-winning success at this very circuit last season. Mark Genet coming across the line first ahead of Nick Heidfeld last time out in Taupo. Verstappen now running down in 13th place, and his new teammate, Mr. Le Mans himself, Tom Christensen, running outside the top 15 at the moment. And the Minardi's got good pace. I mean, you can see that he's in amongst a gaggle of cars. He's not too far off the points. And here is Robin Frains down the inside of Tom Christensen. And oh, we've got a crash there. That is Jeff Gordon tripping up over, I think that might have been Tatiana Calderon maybe. I can't quite see through the gravel. But Jeff Gordon now with front wing damage. And he's got to make his way back to the pits. Jeff Gordon making his Grand Prix World Series debut for the 40 Corsi team alongside Mick Sarlo. And Gordon, the NASCAR legend, trying his hand at Formula 1. That's not how he wanted his first race to go.
I think Jean-Eric Vergne had an issue on that lap, and it completely held the pack up. And Jeff Gordon going into the side there of Tatiana Calderon as a result of it. And I wonder if Jean-Eric Vergne may have an issue, because Alguersuari got by him very easily. And yeah, I think Vergne may well be coming into the pits at the end of this lap if he's got an issue.
Well, he's coming around to the pit entry now. We will show up on the screen whether he does come into the pits or not. We're looking at Takuma Sato in the Onyx there. Onyx once again being led by Ryan Ferris for this season. He's got Alex Albon in the AGS right behind him. AGS having a great race here so far. And there we go, Tom. Jean-Eric Vergne is into pit, so you called that brilliantly, Tom. Vergne did appear to have some sort of issue, which might have been what held up the pack. And we haven't seen Vergne come into pit, so we can't identify what the issue was. But Tom, a very eagle eye there. Vergne coming into pits with a mechanical issue.
Yeah, you can see Jamie Whincup lining up Jos Verstappen, who have managed to bridge out a gap actually now on 15th place behind Alguersuari. This is not for a championship point, but they could well be in the points later on if anything happens to the front runners. You can see those gaggle of cars there. I'm sure Verstappen and Whincup will want to catch up to the back of those. But you know, if they do pit first, the undercut could be the way to go here in Taupo, as demonstrated in the League 2 race earlier on.
And I'm starting to think that tyre wear might now be starting to play an issue on these front-running cars. Buemi out in front, but he's losing time now to Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen closing the gap down to now 2.9. He's quietly going about his business and trying to close in Sebastian Buemi in the lead. He's got a comfortable gap now to Brendan Hartley in third off just over a second. Hartley was right up the back of Magnussen earlier on. But Hartley, the vice-champion of the Grand Prix World Series, just falling away from the back of the AGS now. And here is Nicola Larini in the middle and down in 22nd position. He's just off the back of that gaggle of cars. And, oh, I think that might have been Calderon there, having a bit of an issue coming out of the corner, getting across the curb. The yellow flags are out, and Mika Salo is out of the race. One of the 40 Corsis has retired already, and there is Mika Salo. Doesn't look to be any damage on the car, so I imagine that is mechanical. Well, we will get confirmation of that at the end of this race. One of the 40 Corsis already gone. Dave Goddard, the team principal there for a second season, not really going to be too happy with that, Tom.
No, not a good start to the season. In fact, 40 was sort of one of the more reliable ones last year, but certainly not a good start to the season for Mika Salo on his Grand Prix World Series debut. I'm sure there'll be more opportunities for him later on in the campaign. You can see Brendan Hartley there, by the looks of it, trying to stay in touch with second place man Kevin Magnussen. I'll tell you one driver who's had a good race so far is Paul de Resta in the Midland.
Paul de Resta having a cracking race so far. Midland's not one of the fastest cars at the moment, but de Resta putting in a fantastic job in 9th place, splitting the two Arrows cars. You can see him there behind Kamui Kobayashi and ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. Kobayashi, one of the earlier race winners in Season 1 and an early championship contender, before an array of retirements dropped him out of championship contention. Emma Butterworth, the team principal there, she was very happy with the pace that her team was showing, but not so much happy with the reliability. And taking the earlier decision to put a bit more power into the car earlier on, and then playing catch up on the reliability. And Scott Dixon is out now. One of the Simtex drops out, and we're trying to get a replay here. It's a puncture for Scott Dixon there. So possibly riding the curbs a bit too hard or picking up some debris, maybe from that earlier collision involving Jeff Gordon. But Scott Dixon, as a result, is out of the Taupo Grand Prix. Scott Woodward's the team principal of Simtech. And Brendan Hartley's out. Brendan Hartley running in 3rd place, trying to catch Kevin Magnussen for 2nd. He's dropped out of this race as well. We're riding on board with him now. What has happened? It's been a mechanical issue or a driver error. He's gone wide at turn 1. And Brendan Hartley getting it all wrong into the opening corner of the lap, trying to close down on Kevin Magnussen for 2nd place and ultimately the race lead. And he's trying to get it out of the gravel trap. He's onto the grass now. He might be able to get a bit more purchase there as he tries to get back onto the circuit. And, Tom, what a mistake there from the vice champion.
That is such a really costly mistake, and with the likes of Vernon and Dixon down the order, and De La Racer actually as well, one of the closest championship contenders of last year. Brendan Hartley has bottled it down into turn 1, and that's a very costly error for the home hero. And can he get out of the? I'm sure he can get out of it. I think he's just waiting for a clear gap in the traffic to rejoin. But yeah, not a good mistake there from Brendan Hartley, and he's found himself outside the top 15 now. So he's got a lot of catching up to do in this event. He's got to hope the likes of Buemi, Magnussen, De Costa and co hit trouble.
It's his home Grand Prix. He was hoping to get at least a podium out of this, and he was on course to do so. And is that a problem for Nico Hülkenberg in the Arrows? I think it is. Hülkenberg coming to a stop, and we don't know what it is. It looks to be mechanical, maybe a transmission issue. And yes, it is a transmission issue there for the Arrows. Hülkenberg running in 10th place behind Timo Kobayashi and the Midland of De Resta. And what a shame there for Nico Hülkenberg. He got quite a few podiums in Season 1, but didn't quite manage to break that number 1 spot and claim his first ever Formula 1 victory. And Tom, it's not going to happen here, unfortunately.
No repeats of his podium finish last year for Nico Hülkenberg. And at least it's not an engine issue for Emma Butterworth this time, as she complained so much about the Alfa Romeo engine last year in Season 1. She's made the switch to Ford engines this year, just like with her husband Tom, who has the Ford engine on the back of the BAR, and a transmission problem is the reason for Hülkenberg's retirement. So it's back to the drawing board for Hülkenberg and for Emma Butterworth. Not a good start to the season for her squad, but at least Kobayashi's still in the running in 7th place.
And it has just been announced by Race Control that the earlier incident with Jeff Gordon, it was Kazuki Nakajima that he was involved with. We couldn't quite see what car it was given the gravel that was being kicked up. It was Kazuki Nakajima, and Race Control has just confirmed that that incident is under investigation. So there could be a penalty maybe for one of the drivers, depending on who they find to be at fault. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of that one. I'm not sure I saw enough of the incident to warrant a judgment on my part just yet, but we'll have to have a look at the replays later on and try to see if the stewards can come up with any sort of decision on that one.
And Di Silvestro keeping out of trouble in 6th place, and Alex Albon in front of him in 5th. In 5th. And another driver who's doing well on his debut is Pietro Fittipaldi in 9th place in the AGS by the looks of it. He's in the AGS, isn't he? Or is
no, Fittipaldi's in the BMS.
Yeah, he's in the BMS Scuderia Italia. I don't know why I had AGS in my mind there, but yeah, anyway, so he's doing a fine job, is Fittipaldi in the BMS Scuderia Italia.
A lot of people were expecting Andre Lotterer to be the lead driver of the BMS Scuderia Italia team. Andre Lotterer, a race winner in Season 1 with the AGS team at the Marrakesh Grand Prix. Lotterer currently running in 12th position while Fittipaldi is in the points in 9th. And Lotterer might be the lead driver there, the more experienced driver, but Fittipaldi showing just what he's made of as he runs ahead of Jos Verstappen in the Minardi. And there's a potential move coming up there. Look like Sato is trying to hold off the advances of Alexander Albon. Here is Brendan Hartley trying to make his way past the Onyx of Kazuki Nakajima for 20th place. Hartley now driving angry. He wants to get back up through the field into the points, having spun out of 3rd place earlier on. And Tom, we saw in the earlier race, Sutter was driving angry and he managed to come home with some points and the fastest lap. How do you rate Hartley's chances of getting up to the front here, maybe coming away with a top 10 position?
I think it's going to be even more difficult for Hartley, if I'm honest with you. I think that mistake and the amount of time he has lost by going off the racetrack has cost him a lot more than what happened with Suthill when he came in for that unscheduled stop and he was out on the fresher rubber and setting fastest laps. I think if Hartley's going to win the race, I think an early pit stop may have to be the way to go to get him out in clear air and complete the undercut on a lot of these drivers, but it's not going to be very, very easy.
Pit strategy being a big part of this race. We saw in the League 2 race that there were some drivers who tried the two-stopper, and it could have worked, Tom. I reckon the two-stopper could have worked had it not been for the traffic issue around this circuit. Adrian Suttle tried to make it work, but came out right into the middle of a gaggle of cars, and ultimately he was not able to make any advances into the top 3. He came home in 8th in that race, picked up 5 points for finishing 8th with the fastest lap of the race. And I get the impression here that a lot of these drivers will be aiming for a one-stopper, as that was the race-winning strategy in the League 2 race. And Tom, it's just been put up on the live chat here. Race Control has said that the incident between Gordon and Nakajima will be investigated after the race. So they're putting that one under the carpet for now, and we will get a decision on that towards the end. And there's that car blowing up. I think that's a Lola. Is that Simone Di Silvestro blowing up, Tom?
I think it may well be, by the looks of it. Let's have a look. It does look terminal to me. I think that is Di Silvestro by the looks of it, and that's a massive shame for Alan Charles, who's in charge of that team. We'll find out shortly in a moment.
And yes, all the cars on fire now. Di Silvestro pulls the car straight off the circuit. And that is such a shame for the one that they call the Iron Maiden over in IndyCar. She took a very famous podium in Houston 2013 in the IndyCar race. The second woman to ever stand on an IndyCar podium, I believe. Danica Patrick was the first, as she won in Motegi 2008. And then Di Silvestro taking second place at Houston 2013. And she won the Vancouver Grand Prix last week, ultimately becoming a non-championship round due to the pit lane issues that we had. But Di Silvestro showing exactly what she's made of and exactly why Sauber was courting her for a race drive in 2013.
So Di Silvestro joins Scott Dixon and Mika Salo on the sidelines. I don't think we've had other retirements other than those 3. Topher, you may have to fill me in on that.
So the current running order, we have Sebastian Buemi leading the race ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Da Costa's up into 3rd ahead of Takuma Sato in 4th. Alex Albon just behind him in 5th and trying to make a position on the Onyx. Kamui Kobayashi, the sole remaining Arrows, running in 6th. Quite a long way off the top 5 actually. There's a gap of almost 13 seconds there. De Rest is in 7th ahead of Fittipaldi, who has just pulled into the pit lane from 8th place. Verstappen in 9th, but he will go up into 8th place as he passes Fittipaldi. He does now. Whincup on his debut, the V8 supercar legend, into 9th place on his Formula 1 debut. And Andre Lotterer in the BMS into 10th place. And there is Brendan Hartley trying to make his way past Nakajima, but he's not able to find a way through. We saw earlier on in the League 2 race, Tom, overtaking around here is very tricky.
It is very, very tricky indeed, but not impossible, as it was demonstrated by Adrian Sutil earlier on with his brilliant overtakes, and Perry McCarthy got one back over him to infuriate the German even more, but that's part of racing sometimes. Some tracks are going to have its own characteristics in comparison to others, but whatever circuit you go to, you put your head down and you get on with it.
We have 4 retirements from this race so far. We've been pretty good for attrition so far. We saw in the earlier stages of last season, Tom, we had a lot of retirements in the early races as the teams got to grips with the intricacies of the Grand Prix World Series. And we saw a few retirements in the League 2 race, but here in the League 1 race with the more experienced team principals and the more experienced drivers, attrition not playing so much of a part so far.
No, there's not too much of it so far. I mean, we've seen the likes of Hulkenberg drop out and Di Silvestro, which is a massive shame, but I'm still confident we can get a good race nevertheless, and I think there's been a few changes in the top 10 there. I think it may well have been Alex Albon coming in for a pit stop. I think Fittipaldi came in as well, didn't he?
Yeah, Fittipaldi came in a lap ago, and Albon has just made his way in. Oh, Robin Frames has pulled off in the Super Guri. It's a gearbox issue for the Dutchman there. Not having the best of races anyway. He qualified quite poorly for today and was stuck in the midfield fighting with the 40 Corsis of Mika Salo. And now a gearbox issue has forced the Super Guri to the side of the road.
It's a massive shame for the Super Aguri team, and Varroa Fines, who was excellent in his races he did for them. He replaced Nick Heidfeld towards the end of the campaign. He picked up a podium in his second outing in Fuji, and didn't quite end the season as well as he wanted to have done, but there's still good signs of things ahead of him, I would say, Topher, with Fines and Da Costa in the squad. I reckon they can do really, really well over the course of the campaign. There's a long way to go yet in the season, but yeah, not a good start to the campaign for Robin Fines.
Well, it's effectively a completely new driver lineup that I've elected for in Season 2. I started off Season 1 with Nick Heidfeld and Timo Glock. They're now both racing in League 2 with Zach Speed and Pacific respectively. Nick Heidfeld, he was having a run of bad performances, and I elected to take the decision to replace him with Robin Frames. And as you said, Tom, he took a podium very early on at the Fuji race, which convinced me to give him a full-time seat for this season. And with Antonio Felix da Costa, Susie Wolff was part of the MasterCard Lola team last season, but she picked up a race ban at the Fuji race actually. She caused multiple incidents with other drivers, and she was given a race ban. I elected to loan out Antonio Felix da Costa to them. He was my reserve driver at the time, and he put in good enough performances for me to give him a seat for this season as well. And so far, Da Costa running very well up there. He's now into second as Magnussen pulls into the pit lane. And Frames, not the best start to the season I could have hoped for, but I'm sure he'll bounce back later on.
Yeah, and I think Magnussen will come out. He'll probably want to come out in front of Verstappen. Let's see if he does come out of it. I think he has got out of him. That's crucial for Magnussen for his race. He does not want to rejoin in that gaggle of cars there. So if he's got any chance of taking the lead from Sebastian Buemi, he's got to come out in some clear air. And I think Buemi's going to come up in some traffic actually now. He's coming up towards the back markers.
That was very important for Kevin Magnussen to get out ahead of Verstappen and co. It's a huge gaggle of cars which we are looking at now. There is Andre Lotterer that we're focusing on in 9th place. This train is headed by Jos Verstappen. If Magnussen had been any further behind and dropped into this gaggle of cars, he would have befallen the same fate that Adrian Sutil did earlier on today. So very important there for the AGS. He now has a gap of about 4 seconds to the rest ahead of him. So Magnussen has the clear air to go and get the job done. Here's Albon making a move up the inside of Hami Alguersuari. Albon's already pitted recently, so he's on the fresher tyres, and he's making it work as he gets back into 10th place. AGS running a very strong race here. Magnussen challenging for victory, and he's pitted early, so he might be on a 2-stopper here, trying to get track position. He is in clear air, so he might be able to make that work for when Buemi comes in. If Magnussen can put in the laps now, Magnussen should take the lead of the Grand Prix, but we'll have to wait and see how those tyres work for him. Here is Sebastian Buemi, and as you said, Tom, he is coming up to some back markers. That's Tatiana Calderon, the sole remaining MasterCard Lola that he's now behind. And ahead of them is Jeff Gordon in the 40 Corsa. He was mixed up with Kazuki Nakajima earlier, and their incident will be investigated after the race. But this is a crucial moment for Buemi, Tom. He does not want to get held up in traffic while Magnussen is attempting the undercut.
Now, if you are Tom Bottomley, would you be bringing Buemi in for a pit stop now, or would you leave him out in case he's going to be one stopping? I've got a feeling that Buemi's going to be one stopping, you know, and if he is, then the likes of Magnussen and Albon, they're going to be on 2 stops with the way that, you know, the fact that they've come in so early. I would say that a 2 stop is Phil Kinch's plans with the AGS drivers.
Well, it appears to be working for one driver at the moment. Magnussen made it out in front of this gaggle of cars. Alex Albon right there in the middle of it, and he's trying to make his way through. He's already passed Jaime Alguersuari for 10th place, and Lotterer has got crossed up there with Albon. And we saw this in the League 2 race, drivers trying to come into the pit lane, but then chopping off the drivers behind them, and this time around, it looks like Lotterer has cut across the front of Alexander Albon as he's come into the pits, and it looks like Lotterer is going for a 2-stopper himself. He's going for 24 laps of fuel, which means he will need to pit again before the end of the race, about 12 laps to go, I reckon. So Lotterer trying a 2-stopper there. De La Rosa's come into the pits as well. So this is around about the time when we're going to see a lot of the 2-stoppers coming in. And around about lap 30 or 31, we'll start to see some of the 1-stoppers. Here is Kamui Kobayashi, and Tom, you mentioned this earlier, De Resta having a fantastic race in the Midlands. He looks like he's now lining up the Japanese for a move through into 4th place.
Yes, and Buemi and Sato are both in the pits. Now, this is crucial because with Magnussen on the fresher tyres and seemingly not in too much traffic at the moment, is Magnussen going to get ahead of Buemi? I think he may well do, you know.
So if Buemi is pitting now, I wonder whether he's going to be on a similar 2-stop strategy as well. There's only 1 lap after Lotterer, and Lotterer pitting on that lap, he went on to a 2-stop strategy. So I'm wondering if Buemi's maybe thinking go for 1 more stop later on and go for the splash and dash and get the fresher tyres at the end. Here is Brendan Hartley in 15th place behind Kazuki Nakajima and ahead of Pietro Fittipaldi in the BMS Scuderia Italia. And Tonio Felix da Costa in the Super Aguri has inherited the lead through the pit stop phase. We'll have to wait and see when he comes into the pits, whether it's going to be this lap or in a few laps time for a 1-stop strategy. He has a lead of 18.8 seconds over Kamui Kobayashi in 2nd place. Buemi, the first of the drivers who has come into the pits already. And Tom, this is becoming fascinating in terms of pit strategies. I'm not sure who to call for this one yet.
I don't either, and to answer my question, Buemi did get out in front of Magnussen. So Buemi crucially ahead of the Dane, right behind the Kobayashi and De Resta battle. Now, if Da Costa is going out much longer, the fact that Kobayashi and De Resta are holding up Buemi and Magnussen, this could play into Da Costa's hands for when he comes in for his pit stop. But we don't know yet whether Da Costa is on the 1 stop or on the 2.
Well, he's gone on for another lap. He's now on to lap 26. And I reckon, Tom, if he's on the 2-stop strategy, he would have come into the pits already. So I'm thinking that might be a 1-stopper for the Portuguese driver, which was the race-winning strategy in the League 2 race for Callum Ilott. Is Da Costa taking some inspiration from that and going for a 1-stopper himself? As you said, Tom, Kobayashi is holding up this gaggle of cars behind him, which is De Resta, Buemi and Magnussen. Calderon getting all crossed up through the chicane there. She's running down in 17th position, I believe there will be now, as she passes the pit lane. And yeah, as I've said, Tom, pit strategy is becoming very important now, and Kobayashi, Da Costa, possibly going on to a 1-stopper.
And one driver who's having a miserable race so far is Jean-Luc Verne, who's just coming for another pit stop in the BAR, so he's not having a good start to the campaign, is he? Is the Frenchman. And in regards to Da Costa, I don't know if he's stuck in traffic now. I mean, I know Tatiana Calderon, we saw her lock up, but we didn't see Da Costa in the picture. So I'd be interested to see if Da Costa's stuck in traffic, and if he's not, then that's good news for him, as Buemi continuing to get stuck behind the Midland of Paul di Resta as Jos Verstappen's come into the pits for Minardi. Brendan Hartley trying to get past what looks like Kazuki Nakajima in the Onyx.
A fascinating drive here from Brendan Hartley. He was up in 3rd place earlier on, and he got it all crossed up into the first corner and dropped out of 3rd place as he took a trip across a gravel trap. He's now looking to make up for lost time. He's up into 14th place behind the Japanese driver of Nakajima. And, oh, that is Da Costa getting all crossed up as he's now coming into the pit lane. So hopefully we will stay on board with him and see how much fuel he puts into the car. We've got 32 laps left to run in this race. And we've cut away at just the wrong moment onto the rear view of Paul di Resta, who has the already pitted Sebastian Buemi behind him. Di Resta is carrying on for at least another lap. Kobayashi has also carried on, and he now inherits the lead of the Taupo Grand Prix. Brendan Hartley still trying to get past Kazuki Nakajima, overtaking proving to be very difficult around here. Takuma Sato in 6th place with clear air sets the fastest lap of the race. Da Costa has come out in 5th place, and he is just behind this gaggle of cars. And Brendan Hartley having another look there at Nakajima, and still not able to find a way through. We saw this earlier on with the likes of Neil Jarni and Nick Heidfeld fighting for position, but not able to make any sort of headway through. And ultimately it came down to the differing fuel strategies and a differing tyre wear, and Hartley's into the pits again. So that might be a scheduled pit stop there for Hartley to put enough fuel in the car to go to the end of the race. We're not going on board with him, so we can't see how much fuel he's putting in. But Tom, I reckon at this point of the race, that could be a move for him to go to the end.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that, and I'd be interested to see how much fuel Da Costa is on, because he's got on a fair few laps longer than Buemi and Magnussen, and I'd be interested to see what the fuel load's on there, and maybe we could have a look to see what his pace is like, and then that may give us a bit of an indication to the times he's setting in comparison to Buemi and Magnussen. Having said that, with Buemi and Magnussen getting stuck behind traffic, that's going to draw Da Costa right back in.
Well, Buemi did have a very comfortable lead earlier on before the pit stop phases, and he is still in the net lead of this race, as Kobayashi and Di Resta have not yet pitted. But being stuck in this traffic now behind these two drivers who will be on really worn tyres now, Magnussen has closed right up to the back of Buemi, and once the two in front pit, this is going to be a straight fight between them as to who can get to the end in first. I reckon that both Buemi and Magnussen will hit one more time each, and if that is the case, if we don't count Da Costa into the equation, that will become a straight fight for the lead of the race, not just between them on track, but also between the pit crews. And as you said, Tom, we're not sure about Da Costa's fuel load, whether he's going to the end or not, but he could yet play a part in the outcome of this race. We'll just have to wait and see on that one.
So Kobayashi, who hasn't won a race in the Grand Prix World Series since the Estoril Grand Prix in Portugal, he's the only one actually in the top 8, the only driver in the top 8 at the moment to have won a Grand Prix World Series race in the past. As you can see, Ryan Bob with Sebastian Buemi still cannot find his way past the middle, and Paul di Resta doing a fine defensive job there in 2nd place on the road. I wonder where he'll come at the end of the race. And Alguersuari's dropped a few places. I wonder if he's in the pits for a stop. Yes, he is. So Alguersuari will drop down the order, but it's pretty much becoming Kobayashi's race at the moment, as well as Da Costa's. But I would imagine that Kobayashi and the rest will be on one stop.
And here's Pedro de la Rosa, way down the field actually, not even in the top 15 at the moment. He's stuck behind Tatiana Calderon, the sole remaining loader there. And there is Alguersuari coming out of the pits ahead of this gaggle of cars there. So the two Prosts running in 15th and 17th, both of those drivers were race winners last season, both picking up one race win each. Kobayashi running a bit wide there, but I think he's now coming into the pits. And indeed, Kobayashi dropping down the order there, so that will mean he is in pit entry. It's now confirmed on the graphic he is in the pit lane. Buemi has overtaken Di Resta. Di Resta still has to make a pit stop himself. He's going very long into this race, and he's definitely on a one-stopper. And Kobayashi pitting at the end of lap 30. He is probably on the one-stopper now as well. So now we're going to have to see how this plays out when the two-stoppers come in again. And, Tom, this is becoming fascinating. This is a lot more of an interesting strategic battle than we had in the League 2 race. We saw that Suttel had his problem with the earlier pit stop coming out into traffic, but this time around the traffic's not really playing so much of a part, and we could end up with some very close racing between those differing tyre and fuel strategies towards the end of the race.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I think the traffic is more happening at the rear end of the field rather than at the front, which is good news for us actually, because we're not seeing traffic, holding up the leaders too much. You can see Buemi pulling a long way so far. Or is that Jean-Luc Verne, actually, isn't it? This is Sebastian Buemi now in the lead. That tells you everything you need to know about between the two drivers in this race. And Tom Butterworth doing a fine job in bringing Buemi back into the BAR seat in place of Pascal Wehrlein. But you can see Paul di Resta come into the pits now by the looks of it, or is that someone else? No, it is Paul di Resta coming in.
Yeah, there was Paul di Resta in the Midlands, finally making what appears to be his one and only pit stop, and he will now go onto the fresher rubber. And where's he going to come out? There's a bit of a gaggle of cars around about 8th, 9th and 10th. There's gaps between Christensen and Kobayashi. Fittipaldi could drop into, but is he going to be out in front or behind Kobayashi? That's going to be his main target, the Arrows driver. Christensen and Whincup are in the pits as well, and Kobayashi is ahead of di Resta. So Kobayashi getting the undercut on his Scottish rival there, and he holds on to the lead of that particular battle. But Tom, just to further your point that you were making, I'm looking through the top 15 here. Kobayashi won a race in Season 1. Lotterer won one race at Marrakesh. Alguersuari's got a race went to his name. So out of the top 15, well, De La Rosa's just gone into 15th now. So out of the top 15, there are only 4 previous race winners. So the chances are, Tom, we're going to have a first-time winner today.
I would very much agree with you in that, because Sebastian Buemi, who should have won a race last year but didn't, he's on course potentially for a race win, but he's got another stop to make, hasn't he?
It'll be interesting to see where he comes out in relation to the one-stoppers. He's got a gap of around 28-29 seconds to Kobayashi and di Resta now. Both of them on fresher rubber, so they could potentially make the inroads that they need to into Buemi's lead in the earlier part of their stint. But of course, the flip side to that is when we come to the end of the race, their tyres are going to be more worn than Buemi's, and it's just that toss-up between, do you want the track position? Do you want the fresher tyres? I mean, there's so many different strategies playing out here, Tom, and I still don't want to call who's going to win this race.
Now, I wonder if Kamui Kobayashi, because he's got over 6-second margin actually on, or is it 8 seconds on Albon at the moment that he can make up on his fresher tyres. But Albon's got a 16-second margin to Sato in front of him, who's been sitting some blistering times. I wonder if Sato could be on, he must be on the 2 stops surely as Sato.
Sato proved himself to be something of a qualifying king in Season 1. He was drafted into the Onyx team for the last 5 races of the season. And Tom, was it 2 or 3 races that he took pole position for out of those 5 races?
It was 2. He was in the first couple of races in Sentinel and Fuji.
Yeah, so straight away, Takuma Sato on it in terms of his qualifying pace, an inspired move there to bring him in by Ryan Ferris. He's decided to keep the 2-time Indy 500 winner on for Season 2. And so far that is paying off for the Onyx team. Sato running up there in 4th place. And is this a bit of a fight amongst the back markers here? That is Antonio Felix da Costa we're running on board with now. He and Magnussen are trying to go around the outside of Jeff Gordon, who's just getting in the way of this battle here. And we don't have any blue flags in this, so the driver's not really under any obligation to get out of the way. It's more of an honour code thing for these drivers that they get out of the way of the lead cars. But that has severely compromised Magnussen and Da Costa. Buemi now with a gap of 6.8 seconds in the lead. He won't care one bit that they're getting held up, Tom.
Yeah, and Sato's
a bit of a moment there for Alguersuari. Sorry, Tom. Alguersuari getting it all wrong into turn 1, and he's now got Marco Andretti in the Manor. Andretti's been very quiet in this race. He was drafted into the Manor team in place of Tom Cruise for a full-time campaign. Andretti qualifying down in the lower reaches, down in 21st place. And he's been quietly going about his business. He's up into 13th place now, behind Alguersuari. And not on for some points at the moment, but if there's any more attrition in this race, maybe he can pick up the scraps.
Yeah, and Alguersuari's he came close to picking up the team's first points last year, but took that away from him the final few laps. I remember that was a very heartbreaking moment for me as a team manager. And you can see Brendan Hartley trying to get by the Lola of Tatiana Calderon. He needs to salvage something from this race, does Hartley. He's too far back to have a go here, so I think if Hartley's going to get anything from this race, I think pit strategy is going to be the way to go, unless any failures happen to any of those in front of him.
And Tatiana Calderon there in 14th place, showing what she's made of. She had a really disappointing qualifying where she took 26th and last in the Lola, but showing that her racecraft is up there amongst the best. She's up into 14th place and doing a very good job in holding up Brendan Hartley, the vice champion of the Grand Prix World Series. Not really an easy person to hold up, but Calderon holding her own there in 14th place. They're 5 seconds off the back of Marco Andretti in the Manor, who's trying to get past Jaime Alguersuari. And we're riding on board with Pedro de la Rosa there, who's got Jean-Eric Verne behind him. And Verne, where has his pace been today? He qualified really poorly for this, the reigning champion. He's down in 14th position, and his race pace has just been nowhere.
It's been a really poor showing from Jean-Eric Verne, but to be fair, he's getting stuck behind this queue of cars, beginning with Calderon in 14th ahead of Hartley. Yeah, Calderon ahead of Hartley, and then another couple of cars between him and Jean-Eric Verne. So the title contenders in going into the last race of season 1 are in 15th and 18th place.
And that issue that Magnussen and Da Costa had with the 40 Corsi of Jeff Gordon has allowed Sato to close up to the back of them. There's Verstappen losing position to Jamie Whincup in the Simtek. Now Whincup is making his first foray into Formula 1. He's a V8 supercar legend, not really the most experienced in single-seaters. He's been more about tin tops over in Australia, but now running up in 10th place. Scott Woodward, the team manager of Simtek, taking the decision to bring him up to the main team in place of Stoffel van Dorn, who is now the team's reserve driver. And we all thought that wasn't necessarily the best move, given that Jamie Whincup isn't too experienced in single-seaters, let alone Formula 1. But Tom, he's doing a fine job up there in 10th place. He could bring home some points on debut.
Yeah, Jamie Whincup doing a fine job. It's a shame for Scott Woodward at the moment with Scott Dixon already out of the race. But yeah, Jamie Whincup could pick up a strong point for the Syntep team, who, they did a reasonably good job last year. I thought they could have won a race in Season 1. I think they'll be within the frame of getting a victory in Season 2 in this one.
Well, we had multiple race winners, not just multiple drivers, but multiple teams winning races in Season 1. It was a highly competitive season that we had. And just because he might not necessarily be the fast in the first round, he might be better in the future rounds. And if you take Jean-Eric Verne, for example, he's having a bit of a poor race here as De La Rosa makes a move down the inside of Tom Christensen. Jean-Eric Verne not having the best race here today, but does that mean that his title offence is already over? No, not at all. Sebastian Buemi is showing that there is speed in the BAR, and that maybe this track is just more suited to the capabilities of the Swiss. Whereas Jean-Eric Verne might just be having a bit of an off day. There's another 15 races to go in the season after this one. And Jean-Eric Verne, a model of consistency in Season 1. If he can start putting the points on the board from round 2 onwards, if not today, then I'm fully confident that he can get back up there into a championship fighting position. So, Tom, just an off day for Verne, I think. Just because he's not doing so well here doesn't mean he's going to do badly later on.
No, I think there's a long way to go yet in the campaign, and a lot can change between now and then. As you can see, Pietro Fittipaldi's come into the pits, and looks to be his second and last stop there in the points. I think he's going to have to fight his way back through the field. He'll probably come out in front of this queue here, which would be ideal for him, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to. As they come down the start from the straight now, I think Calderon's going to get in front of Fittipaldi, which is not good news for the Brazilian. As you can see, Kevin Magnussen in second place ahead of Antonio Felix da Costa, as Sebastian Buemi continues to bridge out his lead over those guys, as Kobayashi locks up into that left-hander there. That won't do his chances of taking the lead from Buemi any good whatsoever, and Paul di Resta's right in there as well.
Paul di Resta is putting a good amount of pressure onto Kamui Kobayashi here. We weren't expecting too much from the Midland car, which this season is being led by Michael Gillespie. He's taken over from Ben Johnston for Season 2. And we weren't too sure about their chances for this season. Midland was one of the slower cars in Season 1, but we had a complete reset of all of the teams for Season 2. Everyone started from scratch, and Michael Gillespie appears has done a fine job in getting some speed out of that Midland. Larini is running down in the lower reaches of the field, but Paul di Resta up there in 7th place, and as it stands, fighting for a race victory on a different strategy.
Yeah, and it's losing time for Buemi actually at the moment, so the heavier fuel load is not working for him at the moment. Sebastian Buemi's fuel load will be a lot lighter than Kobayashi. So I'd imagine that Buemi's going to stay out for a little bit. I'll be interested to know what the fuel load is like on here and Topher, because Sebastian, I'm just thinking, if Sebastian Buemi comes in, he'll probably get out in front of Kobayashi and in some clean air.
Yeah, the fuel strategies are proving to be very spectacular in this, with the differences that we're seeing. Some opting for the one-stop, some opting for a two-stopper. And in the League 2 race, the one-stopper was very much the way to go, as we saw a 1-2 for the one-stopping Larousse duo of Callum Ilott and Alexander Rossi. And this time around, there doesn't really seem to be any way we can tell the difference between the two. We've got Kobayashi and Di Resta in 5th and 6th, about half a minute off of the race lead. They're currently on the fresher rubber than Sebastian Buemi, who is in the lead of this race. And when Buemi comes in for his second pit stop, where is he going to be in relation to Kobayashi and Di Resta? If he can get out ahead of that duo, then Buemi is the odds-on favourite to win this race. He's got a gap of 8.5 to Magnussen in second place, and a bit of a lock-up there for Kazuki Nakajima, who is still under investigation for his early collision with Jeff Gordon. It's already been announced by Race Control. They will have a look at that after the race, so no decision will be forthcoming before the end of the Taupo Grand Prix. There are 19 laps to go here, by the way, before we reach conclusion to round 1 of Season 2 of the Grand Prix World Series. There is your race leader, Sebastian Buemi, and there is Pedro Della Rosa, race winner in Season 1, down in 18th position at the back of this gaggle of cars, which is being headed by Tatiana Calderon, who's not the fastest driver out there with the equipment that she has, but is doing a fine job defensively. Hartley's finally made his way through past the Colombian into 13th place, but now Calderon has one of the greatest of all time behind her, Tom Christensen, Mr. Le Mans himself. Can he find a way through the Colombian?
It's possible, and I'll tell you one driver who's just come in for a pit stop is Takuma Sato, and he's come out in some clean air, but he's going to be on the back of this Kobayashi and Di Resta battle. So he'll want to try and get by the pair of them very, very soon, unless they are going to be pitting again, which I don't think they will be, because it wasn't too long before they came into the pits. So Sato's got a fight on his hands if he's going to get a strong result out of this, and this is Pedro Della Rosa down the inside of Pietro Fittipaldi for 17th place.
So Della Rosa making the move stick there, and next up is the reigning champion Jean-Eric Vergne. Here is the battle for second place between Magnussen and Acosta. These two fighting each other means they're losing ground to Sebastian Buemi, who now has a gap of 8.6 seconds over this duo here. And it looks as though to me that Kobayashi and Di Resta are falling away a bit further from Buemi, so their strategies maybe not working out at the moment. There's Albon getting it wrong into turn 1 there, getting the AGS all locked up. He's on his own in 4th place, almost half a minute off the race leader of Sebastian Buemi. But Kobayashi and Di Resta are falling further away from Buemi, who's out in clear air on his own and just able to pump in the fastest laps that he can. So I think with every passing lap, Tom, this race looks like it's more going the way of Sebastian Buemi.
It does look like it, and you can see Sato pushing very, very hard there in the Onyx. It's not too far away from Di Resta in 6th. It's only a few seconds, so he's got a few laps or so to get onto the back of those two if he's got any chance of getting a podium out of this. Buemi's yet to stop, so have Magnussen and Da Costa. I think Albon's on a one-stop strategy, Topher, you may have to fill me in on that. And here is Sebastian Buemi, who is coming out towards traffic now, so he could start losing a little bit of time unless he's got his pit stop coming up very, very shortly. As you can see, Verstappen in the Minardi in 10th place, ahead of Alguersuari and Andretti.
If I remember correctly, Tom, I think Albon was actually one of the first to come in earlier on. That's if I remember that correctly, so he might be coming in for one more pit stop here. I'm looking at the gap between Magnussen and Da Costa to Kobayashi, Di Resta and Sato. Magnussen and Da Costa both have to pit one more time, that's for sure, as Della Rosa's making another move there, this time on Tom Christensen. Della Rosa really on the charge here. He's now got Tatiana Calderon up next for 14th place. But going back to Magnussen and Da Costa, these two that you now see on screen here, they both definitely have to pit one more time, as does Buemi. I reckon Buemi will hold on to the lead of this race, but Magnussen and DaCosta are bound to come out behind Kobayashi, Di Resta and Sato. They might even be a bit closer to Lotterer there in 8th place. We'll have to wait to see how that one pans out. But they'll be on the fresher tyres, so it's looking as though Buemi's good for this race win at the moment. But the fight for the podium, I reckon, is going to be monumental when we come to it.
Yep, and I think that Buemi's going to come out in... I think he will come out in front of Albon, actually. Even if Albon has to pit again, I think Buemi's done enough to get out in front of him. And I think if it's a time for him to come into the pits, I think now is probably the best, because he's going to be coming through that traffic, isn't he?
And you can tell that Takuma Sato is pushing very hard. He's locked up a couple of times now. He's chasing down the duo in front of him of Kamui Kobayashi and Paul Di Resta. He really wants a chance at a podium here. He's pushing with all he's got, and it's showing in the way that he's overdriving the car. Just needs to settle down a bit, get into that rhythm, but you can clearly see there, Tom, just visually looking at the screen, he's definitely closing up on Kobayashi and Di Resta. That could end up being a podium for the Japanese.
Yeah, and Sato showing the fight that he's got within him.
Oh, Tom, sorry to cut across you. We've got another incident here. It's Tatiana Calderon, I think, was trying to come into the pits, has cut across Pedro Della Rosa, and once again we've had a pit lane entry issue with drivers getting confused. And Buemi's in for his pit stop. He's managed to duck past that accident and get into the pits without any issues. So we'll have to wait to see where Buemi comes out in relation to Albon and Kobayashi. Magnussen goes into the lead, but once again, Tom, we have another pit lane entry cross-up there.
Yeah, not very good news for Della Rosa, who's lost a lot of time in that and places, so I wouldn't be at all surprised if Calderon was under investigation for that. I'm pretty sure she'll have the book thrown at her for cutting across Della Rosa into his path. Yeah, not very good driving there from Tatiana.
Well, she's not the only driver to have fallen foul of that particular incident. We've had a couple do it in the League 2 race. Robert Wickens was one of those drivers, as was Alex Zanardi in the Force India. And this time around, this happened to Tatiana Calderon in the Mastercard Lola. And Pedro Della Rosa, who she came into contact with, he was putting in a fine charge through the field, overtaking cars left, right and centre. His progress has now been halted, as Sebastian Buemi did come into the pits. Hartley's now in the pits as well from 13th place. Sebastian Buemi, he was right behind that battle that's going on between Calderon and Della Rosa, and you saw him from Tatiana Calderon's on board that he just nipped past through into the pits, and Buemi very lucky not to get caught up in that.
Yeah, and Buemi's pit stop has got him out well ahead of Kobayashi, so that's good news for Sebastian Buemi. Is he going to get in front of Alex Albon if Albon comes in? Well, he will get in front of Albon. It's just whether if Albon's going to be pitting again, and I'm pretty sure that Albon will be very, very soon.
And Phil Kinch, the AGS team boss here, running Kevin Magnussen and Alexander Albon, he's asking about the possibility of Calderon being investigated for that. And Phil, it wouldn't surprise me if she is, but we've got a few drivers who will be under investigation for similar infringements. So we haven't had any word from the race stewards just yet, but I imagine that will once again be investigated after the race, given that there's been quite a few incidents of those sorts throughout not just the League 1 race, but also the League 2 race. And Buemi is behind Alex Albon, and I think Albon might have to come in one more time. I could be wrong on that, but it might not matter anyway, as Buemi's now on the fresher rubber and less than a second behind Alexander Albon. DaCosta has just gone through into the lead, and that is because Kevin Magnussen has just pulled into the pit lane for what will be his final stop. And where is he going to come out in relation to Kamui Kobayashi, Paul Di Resta and Takuma Sato? This is a very important pit stop for the AGS crew. As we look at Takuma Sato trying to put the move on Paul Di Resta there, this is a fight for a podium right here. These guys on the older rubber, and you can see just to the left of the shot there, Magnussen is coming down the pit lane, and this is going to be very close, but I think Magnussen might come out just behind that gang of cars, and he does. Magnussen comes out behind Takuma Sato, comfortably ahead of Jamie Whincup in 8th place by the looks of it, so Magnussen, now on the fresher rubber, is setting off after a podium position.
That's really not good news there for Kevin Magnussen there. He's lost a bundle of time, being stuck behind traffic, really. So he's got his work cut out to salvage a podium out of this race. But DaCosta and Albon have, I think they're due in for a pit stop. I don't think DaCosta's on the one stop. He's got to be... is that Buemi trying to get past Albon? I thought he was almost pulling to the side a little bit there, but I think Buemi's trying to get past Albon on track. Let's see if he can try and do so on this back straight before Albon does come in for his pit stop. He's not alongside the Thai driver, is Buemi, so I think he's going to try and hold back in case Albon is coming in for his last pit stop. I think Albon...
Sorry, Sky Coach there, Tom. If Albon has indeed gone for a one-stopper, I think he's on a two-stopper, but if he's on the one, and he's now in the slower car as he's got more tyre wear, could he potentially hold up Buemi and Co to allow Magnussen a better run at a podium position?
That's a very good question, Topher, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he actually does try and do that, because we are heading into the final 13 laps of this race, and I think Albon's going to do everything he can to hold Buemi up, and potentially, and the thing is, if DaCosta comes in for his last pit stop, he may not do, but if he does, then Albon's in play for the race win.
I'm pretty sure that DaCosta does need to pit again once more. He was running a similar strategy to Kevin Magnussen, so when he pits, depending on how he's making his tyres work, he will come out around about Magnussen as well, maybe even behind him, with Magnussen on the fresher tyres. And we've seen already across the course of the day, Tom, it's very difficult to overtake around here. So Albon potentially doing favours for his teammates here, not just with his defensive driving, but just by the very nature of the track where it's difficult to overtake.
You can see Jean-Luc Vergne and Pedro de la Resa pitting from a lowly 15th and 17th place. That tells you everything you need to know about their race. Here's Takuma Sato, who is down the inside there of Paul di Resta, but he couldn't quite make the move work, and now he's got a fast charging Kevin Magnussen on fresher tyres looming in behind him, and as you can see Alex Albon in second place there, getting held up by a back marker. I think that's Jean-Luc Vergne, who's just come out of the pits after his last stop, so I think Albon's going to find it difficult actually to get by him unless he gets close enough to put a lap on the Frenchman.
So is this now tactics by the BAR team maybe? Jean-Luc Vergne has just come out of the pits in front of the Nets race leader Alex Albon. And is he now going to hold up the Thai driver in order to help his teammate Sebastian Buemi? There's not just pit strategies going on here, Tom. It looks like there's team tactics going on here as well. And Vergne, like I said earlier with the blue flags, he's not obligated to get out of the way. He won't be penalised if he stays in front of the Thai driver. And while Albon will probably want to get past the Frenchman and clear him, I don't see Vergne making it at all easy. And here is Kevin Magnussen making it past Takuma Sato for 6th place. So here are the moves now from Kevin Magnussen. And it looks like Sato's actually got the legs on him down the straight and makes a move back through again. So Magnussen trying to get past for 6th place, but doesn't quite have the legs to get past Sato. And Sato's now actually past di Resta for 5th. So Takuma Sato went from being overtaken to being the overtaker there, momentarily dropping down to 7th, but coming out of it in 5th place. What driving there from Takuma Sato in the Onyx?
Yeah, brilliant move there from Sato. He managed to get good traction out of that left-hander, as it looks as though that Madsen got the job done on him. In actual fact, he's used the momentum to good effect on di Resta and completely moved up into 5th place. Now, can he do the same with Kamui Kobayashi in 4th? And if he does that, he could go after Sebastian Buemi in 3rd, who should be the race leader, but in actual fact, DaCosta, I think, is actually going to go to the end.
And how about this, Tom? There was Nicola Larini there holding up Brendan Hartley for 16th and 17th positions. Hartley expected to be one of the front runners, and he was earlier on before his mistake. So he's now challenging Larini for 16th place, whereas his new teammate Marco Andretti on his debut is up in 10th place. And here comes DaCosta into the pits now. So DaCosta did have to make one more pit stop, and it will be interesting to see where he comes out in relation to Kevin Magnussen, who he was fighting earlier on. We'll have to keep an eye on that as he comes out to the pits. Albon goes through into the lead of the Taupo Grand Prix, right ahead of Sebastian Buemi. Here is that battle raging now. Vergne's still ahead of the duo, but is pulling away by virtue of the fresher tyres. So he's not really playing a part anymore, other than maybe just making a bit of dirty air for Alex Albon to unsettle the AGS. But Sebastian Buemi, he's really going to be hoping that Albon does have to come into the pits again for final stop. Because if he's not, this could cost Buemi his first ever Grand Prix World Series victory.
And DaCosta is rejoined behind Takuma Sato in 5th place. And you can see a few drivers, I think Albus Roy has just moved off into the points actually ahead of Andre Lotto, and that's because Jos Verstappen's come into the pits for his last stop there for a splash and dash. So Alex Albon in the lead with Sebastian Buemi in second place, 0.2 of a second, heading through the second sector alone there. So there could be a change of lead very, very shortly, or Kobayashi will get onto the back of Buemi. We could be in for a photo finish here in Taupo, Topher, as we did last year.
Oh, we have 9 laps to go here at Taupo. This is getting very exciting towards the end. And Da Costa coming out in 5th place. I think it was inevitable that he was going to come out in a Gaggle cars. And there goes Albon into the pit lane. That is released. And Kobayashi's into the lead. And somehow through all that, I wonder if Albon and Buemi have tripped up over each other as Albon came into pits. Because Kamui Kobayashi is in the lead of the Grand Prix. Where's that come from, Tom?
I think there's been a repeat of an incident into the pit entry, because I think Buemi got held up by Albon as he was coming into the pit lane. It completely lost him Buemi's momentum, and Kobayashi took advantage and is now into the lead of the Grand Prix. And as you can see, well, we were seeing Sebastian Buemi. We've got Tatiana Calderon, who is ahead by the looks of it. Pedro de la Rosa, who is, I think he's battling with her for position. De la Rosa not having a good race, and it didn't help by Calderon's maladies with the pit entry, and I think De La Rosa is going to overtake her for position, I should say. It doesn't look like he's going to do so, but here's Sebastian Buemi, who, believe it or not, is on the fresher tyres, so the race is not over yet by any means, but we're going to be in for a hell of a finish now. Just 3 seconds separating the top 6. Now, if you remember last year, less than 5 seconds separated the top 6 at the end of season 1's race.
I mean, this track might not necessarily produce a lot of overtaking, but it does produce close racing. The cars are able to follow each other around here. And as you say, Tom, we saw a few cars last year all within a few seconds of each other. This time around, we have the top 6 within 3.1 seconds of each other. Here's Jaime Alguersuari having a look at the BMS of Andre Lotterer, and we cut away from that to see Nakajima running wide in the Onyx. And, well, as I was saying about Da Costa earlier, it was inevitable that he was going to come out of the pits into that gaggle of cars. And I think the best scenario there for him was exactly what happened. He came out ahead of Di Resta and Magnussen, cleared at least 2 of those cars straight away. He's now in 4th place, right behind Takuma Sato, as we see here on track. And, yeah, Buemi, he's at the front thinking to himself, how has this happened? He was fighting Albon for the lead earlier on, and Buemi's actually falling back into the clutches of Sato and Da Costa now. So he was trying to get past Kamui Kobayashi for the lead, and he's now actually having to look in his mirrors behind Sato and Da Costa. So that apparent tangle that Buemi had with Albon earlier, we didn't see it on camera, but I think we can safely assume that's what happened. Has that cost Buemi a shot of victory here?
Well, it's not over till it's over. We've got 7 laps to go here in Taupo. You can see there's a battle there between Jeff Gordon and Jean-Eric Verne in a battle for 18th place. And behind them are Tatiana Calderon and Pedro de la Rosa. You can ride on board here now with Takuma Sato, by the looks of it, who is ahead of Antonio Felix da Costa and Paul Di Resta and Kevin Magnussen. And I can tell you that Alex Albon is going fast on the fresh rubber, but he's too far behind to even challenge the top 6.
Well, Buemi's now right back up on the back of Kamui Kobayashi. Tom Butterworth, the team principal of BAR, he is not happy with what Alexander Albon did. He will have seen on the cameras that we didn't see that there was indeed a collision between Albon and Buemi, which at the moment has cost Buemi the lead, but he's right up on the back of Kamui Kobayashi now. And Tom Butterworth, he's hoping that the book gets thrown at Albon. And we've already mentioned it, Tom, there have been quite a few of these incidents. We will have to have a look into it and investigate each individual incident as they happened. There may well be some penalties dished out, but we'll have to inform you of all of those after the race. So Stuart's deciding that for now they're not going to hand out any penalties. They're going to let the rest of the race pan out, and then once the race is finished, then they can properly sit down and have a look through each one. But Sebastian Buemi, his chance of victory is not gone yet. It's been proven that it's difficult to overtake around here, but Buemi very clearly in a faster car than Kobayashi, and with 5 laps to go here, Buemi's going to be going all out for his maiden Grand Prix World Series victory.
And Alex Albon sets the new fastest up of the race, a 1 minute 12.9, Now, remember, in the League 2 race, Adrian Sutil set the fastest lap, and that was a 1 minute 12.7. So Alex Albon going hard on the fresh tyres. He's only a few seconds behind Jamie Whincup in 7th place. So can he get by the Australian? I think Jamie Whincup's Australian. Can he get by him, and then all of a sudden challenge for a top 6 place? But I don't think that's going to happen now. I think he's pretty much going to go for the bonus point, as well as the 8th place, which is ironic because that's where Adrian Sutil had finished earlier.
And speaking of Jamie Whincup, we haven't seen that much of him this race, but he's had a stellar debut in the Grand Prix World Series. He's up there in 7th place in the Simtech. Wasn't expecting too much of him before the start of the season, given that his experience lies within tin tops in the V8 Supercar Series, which he's very successful over there in Australia. He's made the move over to Formula 1 with Scott Woodwis in the Simtech team, and so far he's showing himself to be very capable inside a Formula 1 car. 7th place and best of the rest outside of that top 6 fight. And Whincup in the Simtech, could he maybe be a dark horse for this season?
I think he could end up being one of the surprises. We can't expect too much from him. I mean, we would have thought Scott Dixon would be the favourite out of those two to do well for the Simtech team, but Jamie Whincup seems to have got it right today on his debut. You can see now Kobayashi determined to keep the BAR of Sebastian Buemi behind him. Buemi is still pumped up with adrenaline deep inside himself. He's so desperate to get this victory, to get the BAR season up and running in their title defence. But, you know, this is very much Arrows versus BAR, and guess what? It's Emma Butterworth versus Tom Butterworth.
Yeah, the two Butterworths, a husband and wife rivalry we have here. Emma Butterworth heading up the Arrows team, which currently leads the race with Kamui Kobayashi. And then Tom Butterworth heading up the reigning champion BAR team. Those two, as a couple, have been very successful in the Grand Prix World Series. BAR the reigning champions and Arrows the 3rd best team out of Season 1. And they are now fighting for the lead of the race here and the early championship lead. But right behind them, and now within a second, is Takuma Sato, and right behind him is Antonio Felix da Costa. We have a 4-way fight for the lead here. And just behind them, Paul di Resta and Kevin Magnussen going at it for 5th and 6th place. Could they maybe tag on to the end of that 4-way fight before the end of the race? We only have 3 laps to go here at Taupo.
As you can see, Jaime Roswari in 11th place, just outside of points paying position. King was so close last year to getting his and Prost's first point in the Grand Prix World Series. Didn't happen that day, but did so at the very next one in Estoril. Now you can see Sebastian Buemi, and there's a look from Takuma. Is that Takuma Sato down the inside? Nearly.
Sato having a look there at Sebastian Buemi for 2nd place. That has ruined Buemi's momentum on Kamui Kobayashi. He's now going to lose a bit of time to the Japanese driver. That's just a breath of fresh air that Kamui wants. He wants to take this first win of the season. It wasn't really the qualifying that he would have hoped for. He came across the line in 11th place in qualifying. But Kobayashi is making his strategy work, and he's now fighting for victory here from 11th on the grid. Buemi, he's now cleared Sato again, and he's going to line up for another attempt on the win here. Tom, I imagine this could well come down to a last lap lunch for Buemi.
Yeah, and he's got enough time to do it, but he's going to need to be right on the gearbox of the Arrows to complete the move. And I think if he's going to do it, the back straight is his best chance. And on this occasion, he's not quite got the traction to do it, as Buemi. He's too far back to have a go at Kobayashi. But nevertheless, I think this is going to be a battle that's not just going to go on in the final couple of laps, but this is going to be a benchmark for the season as well.
Well, Buemi has already closed the gap back up to Kobayashi. He's clearly the faster car, but it's just so difficult to overtake around here. Buemi can't find a way through on the Arrows. And we were saying earlier, Tom, that the chances were that we'd have a first-time race winner this time, but as it stands, Kamui Kobayashi is on for what I think will be his 4th career victory in a Grand Prix World Series.
And, you know, for Kobayashi, he's already won twice in the Grand Prix World Series, so could it be 3 victories in this championship for him and take the lead in the League 1 category, or in the Grand Prix World Series, I should say, for the first time since the early part of last year, I think it was, because he was battling with Jean-Eric Verne in the mid part of the season, then dropped away as the season ended.
And we're on the penultimate lap here, and Buemi's right up the back of Kamui Kobayashi. He must be looking for a way through into the lead. And Andre Lotterer running across the outside curve there. He's fighting with Marco Andretti, who's in the points on his debut. And Takuma Sato holding off Antonio Felix da Costa for third place. Sato was looking good for a podium earlier on, and he's looking to make that work with a defensive drive here. And we're now on to the last lap here. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be Kamui Kobayashi in the Arrows, or is it going to be a first-time winner in Sebastian Buemi in the BAR? I wouldn't want to call this one, Tom.
No, it's too close to call at the moment. I mean, it's going to be either Kobayashi or Buemi, but it's just whether Buemi will complete the job on the back straight. Now, can he get the traction he needs? He's just falling a bit too far behind at the moment. He needs to get right on the gearbox there of the Arrows, as he tried to do so in the last few laps. But I think Kobayashi's just got a little bit too much ground ahead of Buemi to keep him behind. I think Buemi's time is pretty much up, really. It's just whether Kobayashi makes a mistake.
We do have a few back markers up ahead of this leading duo, but I don't think they're going to play a part as we are within half a lap of the race finish here. Buemi needs a good run out of this corner to stand any chance of getting past Kamui Kobayashi into the lead. We're looking down straight now. There's a whole gaggle of cars there. Buemi, I think, is a bit too far behind Kamui Kobayashi. And here's Da Costa having a look at Sato. And Da Costa snatched third from Sato on the last lap. Ahead of them, Kamui Kobayashi holds off Sebastian Buemi to win the Taupo Grand Prix. And Da Costa has stolen third from Sato just 2 or 3 corners from the end. And a bump there from Sebastian Buemi on Kamui Kobayashi. Buemi not at all happy there with Kamui Kobayashi. Here it's on board. And, well, actually I'm not too sure whether that was Buemi going into Kobayashi or Kobayashi turning in on Buemi. There might be a case that Kobayashi wasn't looking. Or Buemi, I don't know on that one. We'll have to talk about that later on. But as it stands, Kamui Kobayashi comes away as the first winner of the season here in Taupo. Sebastian Buemi, looking to be an odds-on favourite for the win earlier on, comes home in second place. Not really helped out by his collision earlier on with Alex Albon, which will be investigated following the conclusion of this race. Da Costa beats out Sato for third, and De Resta holds on ahead of Kevin Magnussen for fifth place. Tom, what a race that was. There's battles all the way through the field.
Indeed, and I think on that incident, there's a repeat there of Fittipaldi on Andretti. Oof, I mean, the steward's going to be very, very busy after this race. I think that's probably accidental because of how tight turn 1 is, but a thrilling end to the race and a brilliant manoeuvre there from Da Costa on Sato on the last lap. A brilliant, brilliant start to his career with the Super Aguri squad. A podium finish for them. And yeah, a really, really good start to the campaign, and Alex Albon, brilliant to get that to get the fastest up as well on his Grand Prix World Series debut, and yeah, great start.
And Kamui Kobayashi winning the race. That is the second time in 2 seasons that he has won the season opener. He won the first race last time at Kyalami, and he's won again this season. So here are the full results. Kobayashi beats out Buemi, then Da Costa ahead of Sato. De Resta holds off ahead of Kevin Magnussen for 5th and 6th. Jamie Whincup, a solid debut for him to finish 7th in the Simtech ahead of Alex Albon. Marco Andretti points on debut for him ahead of Lotterer in 10th. Alguersuari, Christensen, Fittipaldi, Hartley and Nakajima round out the top 15. Then we have Larini ahead of Verstappen, John-Eric Verne. What happened to him there? Jeff Gordon, Tatiana Calderon and Della Rosa were the last of the finishers. And in Frames, Di Silvestro, Hulkenberg, Dixon and Sarlo all retiring from the Grand Prix there. And there's a lot to talk about there, Tom. The stewards are going to be very busy, as you said. We're going to have to talk to the stewards about this afterwards, find out if any penalties are going to be applied. And of course, all of the team principals will be updated with the full race results when they are published. But Tom, what a race that was. Just battles all the way through the field. Kobayashi coming through from 11th on the grid for, once again, a season-opening victory.
Yeah, and kickstarting his campaign in the best way possible, as he did so in Kyalami last year. Emma Bottomworth will be very, very happy to see her team back to winning ways, and also doing so first time out with the new engine partners of Ford. So a very, very good start to her campaign. Obviously, it was a shame with Hulkenberg dropping out earlier on, so it's not 100% perfect for her, but nevertheless, a race win is a race win, and her team will be happy to be leading both the drivers and the Constructors' Championship.
And it appears that there is actually no bad blood between the Arrows and the BAR camps, especially after that little coming together that Kobayashi and Buemi had at the end. Tom Butterworth saying that was just a simple husband-to-wife well-done bump. So Tom, I expect, will be disappointed to have not taken the victory there, but I think if anyone's going to win other than him, he'd want it to be his wife.
Yeah, of course.
So a fantastic 2 races there for the opening round of the Grand Prix World Series. We have 2 very deserving winners. Callum Ilott giving LaRussa a 1-2 finish with Alexander Rossi in the League 2 race. And just now, Kamui Kobayashi coming through from 11th on the grid to take victory in the first race of the season in Taupo. It's been a fantastic start to the season. And next time out, as we mentioned earlier, the next race will be in Adelaide. We're heading to the Australian street race. We're reviving the Adelaide Grand Prix for round 2 of the Grand Prix World Series Season 2. And Tom, this is a favourite track of a lot of our team principals.
Yeah, and from what we saw in the Group C races last year, it proved to be a fantastic showing. I mean, we had Bathurst last year as the Australian event, but team managed to decide that Adelaide would be the better location, and rightly so, because Adelaide did host Formula 1 races from 1985 to 95 as the season finale. And right, I think the Adelaide circuit is the right venue for Australia, and I cannot wait for this one. And not to mention, we've got the 1990 Grand Prix 2 World Championship to come in Adelaide later this week. So it's going to be quite a showing over the next week or so here in Adelaide for the Retro Racing Managers League.
We've got a lot of action coming up for you on this YouTube channel, Downforce UK. We're running the Retro Racing Managers League. We've got the Grand Prix World Series today. The last round of the 1990 World Championship will be coming up in the next couple of days. There's a lot to look forward to. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in to round 1 of the Grand Prix World Series. I'm Topher Smith. Alongside me is Tom Kent. Thank you very much for joining in. See you next time.